The new Wegovy pill is now available through Weight Watchers. Powerful GLP-1 results in a simple pill at the lowest price available. And with Weight Watchers, you can get doctor support and personalized nutrition programs. See if you qualify at weightwatchers.com. Ad not reviewed or approved by Novo Nordisk.
Did you know using your browser in incognito mode doesn't actually protect your privacy? Take back your privacy with IPVanish VPN. Just one tap and all your data, passwords, communications, browsing history, and more will be instantly protected. IPVanish makes you virtually invisible online. Use IPVanish on all your devices, anytime you go online at home and especially on public Wi-Fi. Get IPVanish now for 70% off a yearly plan with this exclusive offer at ipvanish.com/audio. Did you know using your browser in incognito mode doesn't actually protect your privacy? Take back your privacy with IPVanish VPN. Just one tap and all your data, passwords, communications, browsing history, and more will be instantly protected. IPVanish makes you virtually invisible online. Use IPVanish on all your devices, anytime you go online at home and especially on public Wi-Fi. Get IPVanish now for 70% off a yearly plan with this exclusive offer at ipvanish.com/audio.
Robots Radio. Games, lore, stories, community. Just press play. Welcome to the Fallout Lorecast, the podcast that explores the boundaries of our knowledge about the world of Fallout. Wastelanders and Vault Dwellers, welcome back to the Fallout Lorecast. This is your host, Tom, or Robots, and I am bringing you another conversation with another content creator about our expectations for the Fallout TV show. I'm trying to get a wide-ranging field of interpretations and perspectives on this, and today I have a YouTuber, a podcaster, a Twitch streamer, Follower Toshi, joining me to share some opinions. Follower Toshi, welcome to the show. How's it going?
Thank you. I'm doing well.
Good. Yeah, so you and I have been chatting a little bit before this episode and then also early on in this episode. And actually, you'd reached out to me and said, hey, I'd like to get you on the show and do an interview. So we're turning this into kind of like a double episode thing. We're going to talk about the Fallout TV show, but then you're going to ask me some interview questions on the second half. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, yes, indeed. It's going to be a good time.
So here, let's get started with your interpretation, your impressions, your expectations, your hopes and dreams for the Fallout TV show. We're still just a few weeks away. And I know in just a few weeks, we're going to have a whole bunch of different feelings and thoughts about it because we'll have seen it. But so far, we basically have the trailer. And then there was an IGN interview with some of the cast that came out just a day or two ago. So there's not a whole lot of information out there. But here, let's start this off in just kind of a broad sense. Where are you when it comes to expectations and hopes and your feelings?
All I know is that if Moira Brown isn't in it, I'm going to cry a lot, several times.
Yeah,
I'm going to be very sad.
So, like, seriously, are you expecting some very specific characters to show back up?
No, not really. I had an episode several months ago where I was more so just like hypothesizing on the what the potential plot or the location for the TV series could be. Back then we knew like almost next to nothing, but the IMDb page was open. And if I remember correctly, I don't remember the names or anything, but there was one character that was listed as like Fiend Raider or something like that. Okay. And the Fiends are a raiding faction from Fallout New Vegas. And back then, my mind was like, okay, well, we're obviously not going to Fallout New Vegas. We've been to the Mojave, been there, done that. So, like, where could they go after that? And it's been a while since I was in that mindset. But effectively, what I began to hypothesize is that we might actually be going more towards like Colorado or Montana, sort of off in that like northeastern direction from like going from the Mojave as sort of like a jumping off point. Right. And then after that, once we actually got more information, confirmation that we were actually going the other direction and going into California, which I was a little bit surprised on. I started to more so like think and hypothesize like, okay, that means, with the trailer and everything, we pretty much got maybe not the entire story, but a big swath of like what will actually be happening. Like just front and center there. But as far as like the larger overarching story, I'm not 100% sure. I've seen some people say that like the NCR might be involved and, that's going to bring up some lore implications, maybe. Me personally, I haven't seen any evidence that the NCR is actually going to be in the first season, maybe a second season thing. But as far as like overall expectations, I don't know. I currently don't really have any. I'm more so just interested to see what the TV series brings to the table, because this would be the first sort of, besides the tabletop RPG, what was it? Winter of Adam.
Right. Yeah.
Besides that, this would really be the first like major lore expansion that we've seen outside of the video game sphere.
Yeah, and that's always a highly contested thing, because depending on who you ask, they're going to say, well, supposedly this is canon, but really I think it's just these games. Even some people are, there are people who are like, well, if it's not Fallout 1 or 2 or New Vegas, it's not canon. It's like if it's a Bethesda title, it's not canon. Or
like Fallout 3 isn't canon, Fallout 4 isn't canon. It's like, okay, well then like pretty much nothing's canon.
Right. Yeah, like where are we going to draw the line? Okay, that's fine. Right. And I get what they're saying is I enjoyed this content more than I enjoyed the other content is really what that translates to. But yeah, that's fine. That's fine. But from the perspective of the developers, and I've spoken with developers at Bethesda before, if it's in a game, it's canon. If it's in an official game, one of the main games of the series, it's canon. Yeah. Also, it seems like Todd Howard has said this movie is also canon. It is effectively like another game that we're getting to watch. And that was the perspective they came at it from. So, and to your point of the NCR, I know that we've seen some images in the backgrounds of pictures of the NCR on, say the logos of buildings and things like that. But outside of that, who knows? Maybe these are just little nuggets that we're getting in the background and we don't actually meet anybody from the NCR in the first season, but maybe we do. Right. So we have all of these questions and things. One of the things that everything keeps coming back to for me when I talk with different guests on this show is the question of what will make this feel like a success to you, regardless of how the story plays out, how the lore falls in line with the stuff that we already know. Like are there going to be new Vegas factions showing up? Are we going to see the NCR? Is the East Coast going to be involved? How's the Brotherhood? Aside from all of that, what would make this a success at the end of the day, when you're done the entire first season and you sit back and go, well, what will make you go, that was good, I enjoyed that, I want more?
Well, me personally, I have a pretty optimistic isn't. I do have a more so optimistic personality. Me, I think, based on the track record of partially Amazon as a development company for TV series and stuff like that. Outside of the Lord of the Rings TV series and the what was it? I can't remember the name of the other one, and I don't want to bring it up without remembering the name.
Yeah, they've done a number at this point. So
yeah. Like they've done a lot of like really good stuff, like The Boys. Invincible,
taking on the Expanse.
Exactly,
they picked up the Expanse and they did really good with that.
There's a lot of productions that they've been up, that Amazon Studios specifically has been a part of, that have gone really well, and some that have just like not gone very well at all. Specifically because Jonathan Nolan is attached to the project, and obviously he has a lot of experience with like The Dark Knight and wow, I'm blanking so hard on like pretty much every other movie. This is really embarrassing because
you don't need to list them all out, but yeah.
But like I guess the Dark Knight series would be like the forefront, when you think of Nolan movie, that's kind of one of the first things that pops to mind. But the track record there, I think, is pretty solid. So for me, going into this, all of the pieces are kind of there for this to, at the very least, be an overall good experience from a film perspective. from a TV series perspective. If we're
Right,
talking about like
right.
ratings and reviews, I think it's going to get pretty good reviews. However, ratings and reviews mean practically nothing to video game fans.
Right.
Well, that's little, maybe not 100% true, but when it comes to TV series, they often judge a lot more harshly. We've seen that with the Halo series. We've seen that more so recently with the Avatar: The Last Airbender series, which wasn't a video game series; it was a cartoon series. But
Yeah, same kind of similar fandom, though. Yeah,
splitting hairs there a little bit. The point is, the general audience reception to the series, I think, is going to be good to great. It kind of depends on what the actual content of the show is. The fandom reaction to it, I think, is really kind of going to depend on just how a lot of the like lore stuff and canonicity comes into play.
Mm-hmm.
From what I've been seeing, that's kind of a big thing with a lot of the criticisms about the Avatar: The Last Airbender series, that some of it isn't real. Like it's a little bit more wobbly. The fan base, from what I've heard about some of the criticism there, but fan bases in general don't like it when you throw out things for seemingly no reason. Like, there's a piece of the way the story goes, and this is a key component, but they just didn't want to even bring that up or mention it. That's super weird. Why not bring that up? It feels like an important part, right? Like, you get a lot of that kind of thing. It would be like if they do the Fallout TV series, and it's like everyone pretends that the Enclave never existed. Yeah.
It would be like, well, that's a little weird. I mean, maybe they aren't the main characters in this story, but like there's remnants of Enclave in the other games. Like they're still part of the background world, you know, like why not at least acknowledge that, right?
That is one of the things that I'm actually hoping isn't a real big, you know, like sticking point or plot point. I remember early on when we're still getting like leaks and everything like that, you know, shots from the sets and whatnot. There were a lot of pictures that sort of didn't, you know, outright prove that the Enclave were going to be involved, but at the same time, they were kind of like, oh, they're kind of starting to look like Enclave and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But Enclave is really just, you know, pre-war military, so it could be practically anything. But me personally, as far as like expectations and stuff like that, I kind of hope that we don't see first and foremost, I kind of hope that we don't see the Enclave at all, except for like maybe some like flashbacks, you know,
or
maybe
just
like
a mention, 3. somebody have mentioned, you know, like, oh yeah, the Enclave remnants who did this thing at that one.
Yeah,
conflict,
like they like what Fallout New Vegas did, where they're clearly aware that they did exist at one point, but maybe they don't anymore. Maybe they're just brought up in they're seen in like, you know, flashbacks and stuff like that, post-war,
or they're not really
flashbacks.
Important in the local context of what's happening in that one specific area of the world.
Exactly. Sure. Yeah, they're a presence, but they're not like a major faction or anything like that. I kind of hope that we don't really see a whole lot of like, you know, the big factions. Obviously the Brotherhood of Steel is going to be in there. That was kind of like we knew that was going to happen. There was no real getting around it.
Right. Vault-Tec, the Brotherhood, some sort of wasteland group of some sort that's creating these towns and cities. Maybe that's associated with the NCR.
Me personally, I would like to see more of a focus on like communities or like tribes, less about like, you know, big factions like Caesar's Legion or the NCR and stuff like that. And at least for like the first season, maybe the first 2 seasons, more of a focus on the smaller, more personal stories and settings, the local townships, you know, area tribes. One of my most favorite examples of like tribal interactions or like, you know, group interactions from the Fallout series is probably the Sorrows from Fallout New Vegas's Zion Canyon. No, what is it? Honest Hearts DLC in Zion Canyon, where the story is focusing around the tribe and their struggles, and that I think what a lot of people is they want, or a lot of Fallout fans specifically, is they want to see like those kind of stories, ones that aren't focused on like, you know, the big like region shaping faction battles and skirmishes and stuff like that. Obviously, there can be, you know, big battles like that and stuff. But I think when it comes down to it, especially in a TV format, I think what people really want is that more like small interpersonal local community kind of vibe, like conflicts and happenings and such. That's one of the things that I think made The Last of Us TV series such a success. Is that
focused?
Well, obviously,
like zoomed in on those specific characters.
Exactly. It focused on the character stories in the areas that they're in, rather than focusing on like the larger macro thing. Because when you focus on the macro, especially in a serialized television format, you kind of tend to lose a lot of the, you know, it gets lost in the sauce. That's why in like things that sort of have like a bigger scope to them, like what was it? Man on High Castle, I think.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. My wife watched it. I only caught glimpses of it.
But like there's such like a larger background, you know, going on. Like half the U.S. is controlled by the Nazis, half the U.S. is controlled by the Japanese, and it's like, you know, the Japanese Empire. And there's like a lot bigger of like, oh, there's like all this like big stuff going on. But it's like, no, the TV show is about, you know, the people within this big stuff going on. Right.
It's through their specific individual character arcs and stories that the bigger picture is revealed, but the bigger picture isn't the primary focus. It's the story of the characters.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think they've set us up for that pretty well. We have the Vault Dweller, we have the Ghoul, we have the Brotherhood member. Do you think there's different ways to set up stories and story arcs, right? There's the hero's journey. There's the Odyssey template, right? This idea, and this is one of the things that my brain has kind of moved towards. Do you think we're going to see the coming together of the Vault Dweller, the Ghoul, the Brotherhood member who for some reason leaves the group or gets lost or whatever, and the three of them plus maybe Dogmeat plus some other people they might meet along the way end up on some sort of journey together?
I'm a little disturbed that you used maybe when talking about Dogmeat, as if Dogmeat's not going to be in the series. Well, come on, Tom.
I mean, you know, like, you know what happens when they add dogs into shows.
That's true. Yeah,
it always ends tragically at some point, right? So like maybe he's along for part of the way, and then tragic.
Or like the directors kind of like tease it, like, oh, big explosion, dog's 100%. Dog comes back like literally a minute before the credits roll.
Right. Yeah, like, something like that. or if with a character like the Ghoul, you know, the Ghoul's seemingly has been around for a while before the bombs dropped. We get these glimpses of him with his daughter, it seems like. And then
I had almost forgotten about that. That specifically, I think, is going to be more of a big deal, specifically Walter Goggins and like his story. Because I'm watching the trailer and everything, and I'm going through it, and I see, you know, Walter Goggins riding away on a horse.
Is it Walter or Walton? I think it's Walton.
Walton? Is it Walton?
Yeah, Walton. I've made this mess. Yeah, Walton Goggins. I've made this mistake before, and people have commented on it. Yes.
You get more distracted with pronouncing his last name correctly.
Yes,
don't worry about his first name.
Yeah, the last name is the more interesting. Goggins. Yeah.
Right. Anyway,
go ahead.
I'm watching the trailer, and I see Walter Googles on. I see Walton Goggins on the horse at the very end of the trailer, and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, that's interesting, especially since they show him with a child and stuff. Yeah, because they don't normally, especially in flashbacks, they don't include kids in TV or movie flashbacks unless it's some sort of like, you know, some sort of parallel between then and now. Right. Drawing it back to The Last of Us, that's what we saw with Joel's daughter, and, you know, the comparison between her and Ellie.
Yeah, it helps us understand the character and their motivations, the things they care about, those kinds of things.
Exactly. Yeah. I think if Bethesda's, you know, obviously Bethesda's got their hands in and stuff, I think that sort of parallel specifically is already off to a better sort of, you know, fathered son or like parent child dynamic than we had in the beginning of Fallout 4.
Do you think he's going to be the father character for the Vault Dweller who leaves because she's a young woman who's out on her own?
I think that I think it's going to kind of depend on who her father is, because I remember that there was a lot of speculation on whether or not I'm blanking on her name. What was her name again?
The actress or
no, the character she plays.
I'm so bad at character names. Fallout TV show characters. I'm just gonna look it up. We're just Googling it right now.
Right.
Internet. Why? Ella Purnell. Jean?
Jean?
It says Jean. Yeah.
Her character's name is Jean?
Yeah. The Brotherhood guy's Maximus. I remember that. I guess it's Jean.
Yeah. Jean.
Why didn't I guess I never realized this. Why have I not? Names are not like, I have these weird quirks in my brain. Labels for things and names fall out really, really easily.
Oh, yeah.
Like all the time. So, no, that is a location. That's a town. Anyway, it might be Jean. The internet seems to think Jean. Yeah, no, it's Jean. According to Weird. No, it is. That's right. Okay. Thank you, listeners, for waiting for us to figure that out. While everybody just yells at your listening device.
This is what happens when you do literally zero prep time. But yeah, so I don't think that because again, it's going to kind of depend on whether or not Jean. Whether or not her father is the overseer of the vault she came from, because from what I remember, there was a lot of like speculation and like maybe not theorizing, but kind of like just like general buzz where it's like, her dad is the overseer. And then, she either has to leave or leaves of her own volition, completely unrelated to any coercion or dependency, which based on everything we saw, I don't think is the case. There's a very high likelihood that if her father is the overseer, maybe he dies in like the first episode and then she leaves the vault.
Right.
And that could be a reason why she leaves the vault. But it's going to kind of depend on the relationship between her and her father, whether or not her father is dead. And I guess more so how Jean and Walter Goggins' character are going to like interact. I think he's just called the Ghoul right now.
Yeah, he's the Ghoul. Right.
Yeah.
Right. But it seems like he's become some sort of ranger, some sort of lawman, something like that.
He's definitely a deputy of some kind. He's definitely filling that that megaton sheriff kind of role.
Right. Right.
But I think it's really gonna kind of depend mostly, I think, on what Jean's relationship was with her father. And if we speculate that the Ghoul had some sort of maybe his young child died during the bombs and or the subsequent fallout. Roll credits. That's
Thanks, everybody. We are done.
Yeah, and that's it for the podcast today. Join our. It could be likely that she, the Ghoul's daughter, died as a result of either.
I think that's seemingly implied. Is that bombs drop? He picks her up on the horse because he's in some sort of outfit. Maybe he's an entertainer or something. But he's like, okay, we got to get out of here. Let's go. And then he picks up the girl and they leave. And then flashback forward and him, like staring off at the distance, remembering and missing her, like that kind of thing. Like maybe she didn't even die due to that, but maybe she didn't become ghoulified and she just didn't live as long as he did, like.
I think what's more likely is that the bombs dropped and everything, and then the two of them had to go into like survival mode. Yeah, and more so specifically learn how to survive in this world. Right. Whatever sort of background the Ghoul had when he was not a Ghoul. Whatever sort of background he has to kind of learn to adjust to that. If, as you sort of insinuated there, he was an actor at one point,
because he's in a really funny looking Western outfit, right? It is very sort of like stagey. It is stagey. So it's either because he's an actor or it's because pre-war America was that just that cheesy, which sometimes it is, you know, like you look at some of the old footage and stuff, like some of that like 1950s style stuff, like it's very similar to the cowboy outfit that in Back to the Future that Marty puts on, thinking that this is the way they dressed in the Old West, and then everyone looks like looks at him like
everybody's like, you look like an idiot.
right, and it's like, oh, okay, but like like it could be either of those things, right? Like one or the other. Also, why would he have a horse?
Exactly.
Like they have
just
cars.
Random horse.
It just happens to have a horse. So it makes sense that maybe he's on a set filming some sort of Western or something. And the horse is there and they got to go. And because the bombs are coming. And so they just take off on the horse, you know? But like, I also think that if there is a tragedy that happens with his daughter, or maybe it's not even his daughter, maybe it's a little girl that he was helping take care of because of the tragedy that was happening, and they just got stuck together. It could be.
Yeah,
he could
be
be
adoptive kid,
an adoptive father in a way. But you need a way in these types of shows to fill in the world and an understanding of the world to people who don't play the games. And so you need a way to put them in the mindset of a character like the ghoul and give us a sense of how dangerous the world actually is. And so you do that through flashbacks, but you also do it through emotional connections. So if somebody like the ghoul goes through this loss and loses this girl to raiders or, you know, starvation or whatever, the hardships of the wasteland, it all of a sudden sets, you know, stakes. Like there are stakes there. We know that there are people who have suffered and continue to suffer. We know that the world out there is tough to live in, and it doesn't just look run down and weird because it was the end of the world. There are people who are, in fact, I would say the majority
run
of
down
people
and weird.
The majority of people you're going to come across are just scraping by. They're emotionally damaged because this world is hard. And so you have the contrast, and this is one of those fundamental things in Fallout, the contrast between the hardships that the Wastelanders are going through and then somebody who grew up in a vault. And
I think that specifically, because if there is going to be some sort of like the ghoul becomes sort of like either a guide, a mentor, an adoptive father to Jean,
right?
It's just such an odd character name for her. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but if he does become sort of that like father figure to her, I think maybe a primary reason is because he sees a lot of that same unprepared for a more savage world in her that he saw in his daughter, his adoptive daughter, whoever that child was, and himself. And he can both relate to that personally from his own lived experience being a post-war or a pre-war ghoul, and the experience of his daughter seeing what happens when somebody is that kind of like level of unprepared. That's kind of something that they sort of
naive. Like
they were they were kind of getting that like pushing that point at the beginning with that guy, the beginning of the trailer, with the guy at the campfire with the dog that eats the rad roach, where he was kind of like he really built up like the horror vibe of the entire series. Like, if you're not prepared, it's going to eat you alive.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, you know, pushing that more forward. Like, this is a dangerous location. This is a dangerous world now. And if you're unprepared for it, you're going to have a bad time. And the ghoul and his daughter, adoptive daughter, whoever that was, they were unprepared for it. She most likely died not of natural causes. And he, you know, obviously grief stricken and stuff like that, is able to adapt and more so better survive himself, but also sees what happens to people who don't. People who can't adapt or learn how to survive,
and maybe feels guilt, and being the ghoul is more human than most of the humans you come across, even though he looks like a monster. You know, like that whole thing probably will play into it. All right, so we've got
that on a bumper sticker.
Yeah, right. It's one of those common themes, though, is that, like, you know, humans are the real monsters. This is a very common theme in fantasy and horror and all that. But it happens in Fallout, and we do meet ghouls who have a sense of humanity in a way that sometimes the people around them don't. You know, and they get ostracized. It's an analogy for racism and those kinds of things too. So we have those two characters, but then we have Maximus and the Brotherhood. And I think this is one of the things that a lot of people are debating. Like, it's one thing for us to see, this ranger looking ghoul character and go, okay, that feels very Fallout, and a vault dweller and go, okay, we know what those things are.
Yeah, but, he's badass. I like him.
Right. He's the badass, like, gunslinging, cool. Yeah. Okay. Vault dweller. Yeah, I've been that. I've done that a few times now.
I can't wait to hear what kind of one-liners he has.
Oh,
They're gonna be so good.
It's going to be so good. But I think the real question then is Maximus and the Brotherhood and the state that the Brotherhood is in, and is he coming over from the East Coast to the West Coast? And he seems like somebody who, from what we've seen in the footage, is experiencing things for the first time. He seems pretty green. He seems like he's out in these battle situations. He's a little unsure of himself. The wasteland is a little overwhelming, or just the sheer scale of the military power that they have, or something. There's this sense, this vibe of, my gut is he's not going to be sticking with the Brotherhood for too long. That
I think that is likely, because it, as you said, it all kind of depends on what sort of or not sort of, but what group or what faction or not what chapter of the Brotherhood he's coming from.
The personality of the leader. Is this a Maxon style Brotherhood like 4? Is this a Lion style Brotherhood like 3? Is it somewhere between?
Exactly. Yeah. Because what I'm remembering specifically from we talked earlier about the video I made speculating on like where the series could take place. And because we knew like early on, like the Brotherhood was going to, it wasn't just like speculation, like everybody's like, oh no, yeah, it's Fallout, the Brother's absolutely going to be in there. No, we knew that the Brotherhood is going to be in this series from like, leaked this, leaked that.
Oh, even just the logos like on the power armor outfits that we got pictures of.
Yeah, exactly. And the power armor was a pretty dead giveaway in and of itself, though. Sure. Like, come on.
Right.
But one of the things that I was speculating with that video specifically, now that we're talking more about it and I'm remembering more about it, is that there's not really, because we didn't really know when in the timeline the story was going to take place. Now we know for sure that it's going to be taking place after the events of Fallout 4.
Right.
With that in mind, and I guess it kind of depends on what the canon ending of Fallout 4 is. A lot of people say that it's the Minutemen ending. Some people say it's the Brotherhood ending, the Railroad Institute. I don't think it really matters. Me personally, I think that the canon ending for Fallout 4 is the Minutemen. But what I think would be the more interesting canon ending would be the Institute, because then that raises a whole bunch of like character implications for the sole survivor.
Right. It puts the Brotherhood kind of on the back foot over there.
Yeah. And it kind of draws into more question like, well, what's the East Coast going to look like now that the Institute is starting to like, or is about to like really start expanding, which is kind of what it made it seem like maybe that's what they were kind of trying to do. Admittedly, their motivations are still a little murky, but
sure. But just the potential for more actual synths being around and infesting, if I can use that word, because that's what people would feel like, other locations beyond just, that area, like the Boston area. Like, can you imagine them hinting at like some character in season 1 where somebody's like, wait a minute, you don't really seem the same as you used to. Did you change?
Right.
And like those of us who have played 4 are going, are they a synth? What? What?
But it's got to be something that they just kind of like drop there and they just never ever mention.
You don't bring it back up to like season 3, and then all of a sudden season 3 is like the synth season where like all of a sudden people are uncovering that like they've been replaced and there are synths out there, and
then that's when the Enclave comes in and the Legion comes in and everybody's just like smashing their action figures together.
Yeah. My G.I. Joe's going to beat up your Transformer. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Get him. But so along that line, one of the things that I was like sort of mapping out, like, okay, where are the Brotherhood like post Fallout 4? Where are they? Well, they're not in California. They're hiding in the Mojave. So the West Coast is pretty much, as far as we know anyway, like a complete no-go.
Yeah. There's rumors about like Chicago and some other places. But for the most point,
Yeah.
probably the West Coast, right?
Yeah, like West Coast, not really, like maybe a little bit like underground, but for the most part, like on the surface level, they are not on the West Coast.
Right.
The East Coast, again, it kind of depends on the primary ending of Fallout 4. They are either a presence there or are sort of like splintered a little bit. Definitely not completely gone, but definitely on the back foot.
Or have continued to put offshoot groups in other locations, have continued to expand in these like almost like scouting party sorts of ways, you know, like I would imagine that would be part of the plan. You're not going to keep everybody all in one place, especially if you're still scouting for gear and technology and things that you would be bringing back to your main hub. So,
especially when they have like, the Citadel is still there. Just because Maxon's dead doesn't mean that the entire Brotherhood is wiped out. So Citadel is still there. So they're most likely going to pop up at some point along the East Coast again.
Right. And who knows what's going on in Appalachia.
Exactly. Like I was going to say, like, I mean, I don't really think like maybe they sprung up again. Maybe not. We don't really know as much about West Virginia post Fallout 4, but as far as like where on the larger geographical continental United States map the Brotherhood are, they are more likely in the East Coast, probably not as much in the West Coast, but we know pretty much nothing about the Midwestern Brotherhood. So that's kind of why I was speculating like, oh, maybe they're more so towards like the Colorado area, or like maybe not closer up
Kansas
to Montana,
City,
but kind of like
maybe even
like leaning more towards into like Illinois. It's like the heartland area,
right?
Maybe they're closer to that way. So that's kind of where my mind was going. Like, oh, okay, so we're probably going to be going over to this part of the location for the show. And then Todd Howard came out of nowhere and said, "No, stupid, we're going the other way." And I'm like,
but it may be remnants of the Brotherhood from other locations now coming back to the West.
Right. And so that's kind of where I think the big question for is Maxim or Maximus?
Maximus. Yeah.
Maximus. That's kind of what I think the big question for his character is. Is he a DC transplant? Is he a Midwestern transplant? Is he part of like the last remaining members of, actively functioning Brotherhood in, the West Coast? What side, where does he come from?
Right. I bet he wasn't raised in the Brotherhood. I bet he was a convert. I bet he was found somewhere, and then as a young man, maybe a teenager or an older child, and just kind of brought in because he didn't have anywhere else to go. That's kind of the sense I get from him.
Yeah, and because if we're going with that, the theory that he was either. Specifically, if he was a new recruit like that, then he would more so likely have to be either Midwest Brotherhood or East Coast Brotherhood, because as far as we've seen, they're sort of the only ones who are more so open to outsiders and are like recruiting as more of a active, quote unquote, military faction.
Well, here to go on with your Institute ending, if the Brotherhood in Boston takes a big hit, then maybe the leadership changes. Maybe then they become more open to bringing in other people because they need to.
I think that is probably going to be a big factor, especially if the canon ending of Fallout 4 is the Institute wins, then I think it is more likely that Maximus is either a DC transplant, because as we've seen with the DC faction specifically, they are much more open to actually like recruiting outside members. That's probably changed a little bit under Maxim or under Arthur compared to Elder Lions. But it is also likely that he is a Midwest Brotherhood, because we know that they specifically are like completely open to recruitment. But since, there hasn't really been any conversation or confirmation from, Todd Howard, Bethesda, anything like that, which one was it? It was Tactics, right? That was the one with the Midwestern Brotherhood.
I think that, or either the Brotherhood or Steel or Tactics? I always get the two confused because they're non-canon, so I don't spend too much time thinking about them. Yeah, it was one of those.
It kind of all depends on whether or not they consider Tactics to be canon, or at least canon light. Yeah, because then like a Midwestern faction could exist, and then it could be an explanation for where Maxis came from. But I think more likely it's going to be like he's going to be from the East Coast, and he's going to be like, as you said, a newer recruit. That's why he seems a lot more apprehensive and unsure.
Right. Yeah. He looks unsteady in all the trailer stuff. So here's one more question, because we're getting close to the end of this section of the show, because we have to move on to the second half. With a name like Maximus, and with the traditional name of leaders and the family of Maxon, those are very similar sounding words.
They are.
Do you think that he's being set up for a character arc where he starts out with the Brotherhood, he goes away from them, then he comes back and ends up leading them at some point? Is he a future leader and we're watching his evolution?
I kind of hope not, specifically because I feel like it's too easy, and more so specifically, I think it's too obvious, but I also think that it kind of draws attention away from Jean's storyline, because obviously I would assume,
before you get too far on that thought, I would assume that this would be like, let's say they're planning 5 seasons of the show, that this would be something that plays out towards the end of the last season, and we don't have any sense of this until like season 5, where all of a sudden there's an opportunity for him to take control or something, right? So we would still get Jean's story probably for the majority of it, but then the twist at the end is that like he ends up becoming a leader of the Brotherhood, and that plays into later on conflicts, like, who knows, the Enclave shows back up, or the Legion, or whatever.
Right.
So yeah, I wouldn't want it to step on top of Jean's story. I think Jean's story is going to be the primary story, and these other characters are going to be these other side stories that kind of move along with her. If that was the case, would you still not want that to happen?
I mean, if we're talking about like 5 seasons,
long arcs,
yeah, like way out there.
Like in one season, it would be kind of silly for him to go from like green recruit to leader of the Brotherhood. Like that would be so quick.
If they did that, that'd be way too much whiplash. We'd be going way too fast.
Right. But imagine years from now. Let's say 5 seasons from now, full season set up. He learns a lot. He spends time in the wasteland. He learns from the ghoul, right, who becomes kind of this wise character for the two of them. He has these adventures where he saves these towns and works with Jean to restore the water chip or whatever, right? They go through all of these things. He grows as a character. He goes from being like timid and worried about fighting things and dealing with the wasteland to, at 4 seasons later, he is a freaking badass. He knows everybody he needs to know. He's encountered everything from death claws to super mutants or whatever. He's survived all of it. He understands all the technology, and he's the man for the job to lead the Brotherhood.
I think that's once again going to kind of depend on what faction of the Brotherhood he comes from, or what the overall mentality of the Brotherhood he comes from.
Well, what if it's a dark version of the Brotherhood that feels more like the Enclave?
The edgy,
and he's the guy
ones, like Shadow the Hedgehog with a gun.
Yeah, it's got a goatee. Yeah.
Let's go.
A goatee and tattoos. Yeah. Like it's that version. Like it's this dark version of the Brotherhood that's been like twisted from a lot of its original intent, and that's part of the reason he leaves. And then he comes back and actually reforms it. Like he's the hero that they needed in order to bring it back to its glory days or something. But
damn it!
But everything's gray.
Nolan's directing.
Yeah.
Nolan's
everything's still gray though. Yeah. So like even the glory days of the Brotherhood are still kind of isolationist and still kind of like they still take things for people without asking. Yeah. Like they're not white knights. So maybe they're less black, but it's still dark, right?
Yeah, because I do think that is going to be a major factor, like what the mentality of the Brotherhood faction that he comes from is. If he's like a fresh recruit, then that obviously means that they're a little bit more open to accepting new people. They could still have some of their more xenophobic, totalitarian, like superiorist kind of like, oh, like we don't need your kind, scaver or wastelander, stuff like that. But like if they see potential in you, like, okay, we're a little bit more open to it, but not if you're a ghoul. We don't want them.
Right.
Or a robot.
Yeah.
If they have like that kind of mindset, him more so Maxis traveling with like a ghoul and like a vault dweller and stuff like that, it could bring his character into like just a better understanding of the world. Like, ghouls aren't so bad. The wasteland's bad, but there are people trying to like bring it up and get something started again.
Right. I think the ghoul saves him and dies in order to do so, and it changes his mind about these ghouls and these other people who he didn't think were people before.
I do also anticipate that the ghoul might actually die before the end of season 2.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised about that either. There's probably that's like,
but what as far as like him becoming, with all that said about like Maxis and the Brotherhood and everything,
Maximus.
Me personally, like I said, it's going to kind of depend on the Brotherhood itself. If he does, go on that arc, me personally, I would rather see him go through like a later on, just like long form struggle between the goals of the Brotherhood and the ideologies of the Brotherhood, and like what he learned and like what he, who he is as a person, instead of becoming like late stage. Instead of him becoming like the elder, like the leader of the Brotherhood,
right.
I would much rather see him in like a paladin role, because that more so to me says, his character isn't like, the Dragonborn or like of this long bloodline of like noble warriors and stuff.
He's the one who could fix and save everything.
He's not the one. He's just a guy who's out here doing his best and fighting for something he believes in. But when you get to like, season 5, he starts having like conflictions like, oh man, I used to like roll with this ghoul who was like really awesome. And like, he did a lot of cool stuff. And like, I met this like super mutant that talks. I met this Death Claw. I met this, he's learned a lot more about the people who actually make up the citizenship of the wasteland. So when he's now at this like higher position and there's a lot more expected of him, and he's expected to think and act and behave a certain way because of the, the chain that binds and the hierarchy of the Brotherhood, he begins to like question himself. He's like, is this really what I want? Because I know that like, I believe in the ideals of the Brotherhood and like what they're trying to do, their goals and stuff like that. But is this like really the place I want to be with the way that some of the people around me like think and behave and stuff like that? Yeah. Is this the kind of person I want to be? Or do I want to like try to either change things internally, or, he just like ends up leaving the Brotherhood or something like that? I think
there's going to be some sort of character arc.
Yeah, especially with what Bethesda has sort of done with the Brotherhood in like Fallout 4 and Fallout 76, and I guess more so starting in Fallout 3, where they kind of like start to like reshape the Brotherhood a little bit compared to how they were in the older games. I think that's more likely, because I think they're definitely starting to bring more questioning into like what the Brotherhood actually are and what their goals are, and what sort of ends justify the means in achieving those goals.
Right. One of the things I really love about the idea that Bethesda started changing that up more so than in the first 2 games is that I think one of the things that we tend to do as humans, especially here in the United States, is we treat organizations, corporations, government entities, whatever, like they're people. They're not people. If you own a business, the business is only as moral as you are as the owner and leader of your business.
Right.
If you then sold that business to somebody else, the business is only as moral as the new owner of that business. The business itself has no morality, right? So the Brotherhood as itself has an ideology that it was founded on, yes, but in and of itself, it has no morality. It is only as moral as the current leader currently is. This is the reason why dictatorships don't work. It's because, let's say you start a dictatorship with a really good person, right? As soon as that person goes away, the next person who comes to power, chances are they're not going to be a good person because they're drawn to the power.
That's what we saw in the change from Fallout 3 to Fallout 4.
Right,
Fallout 3
right.
had Elder Lyons, and he was, a lot more of a humanitarian. He was like, oh, we got to help these people because this is the area where we have the tools and resources and stuff like that.
And this is what we need to do in this situation because of what's going on and my experience with leading things in the world or whatever. Right. And I think this is a big thing I see when people debate this all the time. They'll say things like the Brotherhood isn't X. And it's like, well, the Brotherhood is only what it is based on who its current leaders are and how those leaders interpret the mandates of their organization and what they're willing to do based on the desperate situation that they're currently in. The Brotherhood isn't anything. The leaders at this specific time are X, Y, or Z, right? But like as a whole, the Brotherhood, the most you can say is the Brotherhood was founded on this ideology, but that ideology has been reinterpreted every single time there's been a new leader.
The Brotherhood is a ship, and the Elder is the captain.
Right. A ship cannot steer itself anywhere. A ship is built to just float on the water, and without somebody leading it.
Unless it's got AI, which then you bring in the Institute, and this conversation is just dead.
Right. But the AI is now steering it. Like it is only as moral as the AI. But that's the idea. Is like, a ship is just a ship. You can't say that the ship likes to go to certain locations. No, the ship doesn't care where it goes. The person steering the ship cares where it goes. But it's and we do this all the time. This is one of those things that like we tend to, like, oh, I can't believe I hate AT&T or whoever because they are like this. And it's like, well, they are currently acting like that right now because that's how they've set up their business model. That doesn't mean 3 years from now they don't go through some sort of big change and all of a sudden they're not doing crappy stuff anymore. And if they aren't doing crappy stuff anymore, then maybe you should buy from them then. And then once they start doing crappy stuff, stop buying from them. Exactly. It's like in our heads, everything's just frozen in the current moment at all times. And it just isn't. It just isn't that way. So, yeah, so that's my perspective on the Brotherhood and where like this Maximus character might be coming from a better or worse version of the Brotherhood. We don't know. It all depends on who the leadership is. And as the story plays out, maybe it gets worse. Maybe it gets better. But there's going to be some sort of arc there. And at least I think we can at least say that much.
Oh, no. Yeah, there's definitely going to be an arc for like all of the main characters. It just kind of depends on like what that arc is, what the story that Bethesda wants to tell is that's going to be the direction that it goes. Yeah.
And I think they'll do things. And of course, the audiences out there and the fans are all going to have different perspectives, and you're going to have, it doesn't matter for some percentage of fans of anything. And I'm not talking Fallout. I'm talking every kind of fandom, Avatar, The Last Airbender, or the Muppets. It doesn't really matter. But the way the world is now is that people just love being anti-fans. They love saying, you know what? I love this thing, but everything they do now sucks. And I think that's just kind of the state of the world that we're in right now. And sometimes people who complain about stuff have good points, but sometimes they just like to sling crap all over the place. And, you're never going to make them happy. It doesn't matter what you did because it's not the thing that you already did before, which would make most people upset. If you just did the same thing again, the other side of the fan base is going to go, well, you didn't make any changes. Well, this is the same crap we already got. Well, this isn't even new, right? So as a creator in this space, whether it's making games or TV shows, you're kind of stuck. Some percentage of the fan base is just going to be crappy about it. And so you might as well just do the thing that you think you should be doing that creates a good story. And hopefully most of us agree, hopefully most of us who aren't just ready to crap on everything, you give it a real shot. And, and like I've said on some of the other episodes, the acting's good, the directing's good, the writing's good. It for the most part doesn't break anything too much with the lore. Little changes here and there are going to happen, but nothing too extreme. And hopefully we get a great TV show. So that's kind of where I am with it. Do you have any last thoughts on it before we just switch over the interview?
I don't think so. I think we've covered pretty extensively on the Fallout TV show.
Sounds good. All right, cool. Well, we'll take a quick break. I'm going to go thank the patrons and do my whole thing. And then we're going to come back and I'm going to answer some of your questions. So
let's go.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Yeah.
It's time for that spring reset. I'm taking a look at everything in my closet and figuring out that, oh no, this absolutely needs to go. And it's about time I replace things so that my clothes aren't older than my 15-year-old. Now you might think that they lasted that long because they were well made, but no, they're in terrible condition. Unlike the new jeans I just got from Quince. Jeans have always been my personal go-to because you can kind of wear them for lots of different things, but maybe they're not your thing. Maybe you're looking for, 100% European linen with insanely soft flow knit activewear fabric. It's definitely getting warmer, and their flow knit activewear is moisture wicking, anti-odor, and soft enough that you'll actually want to wear it every day. So pick out what you want. You can't go wrong because they have prices 50 to 60% less than similar brands. And like I said before, they are high quality. I continue to wear their clothes all the time, and I know that these new jeans are going to last me a lot better than the other things in my wardrobe. And on top of it, they look great. They're so comfortable. And I spent just as much on the jeans that I am now cleaning out of my wardrobe. So if you're looking for something better, just all around better, go check out Quince. So go do it right now. Refresh your wardrobe with Quince. Go to quince.com/falloutlore for free shipping and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. Go to quince.com/falloutlore for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/falloutlore.
This is the new Weight Watchers, built for real life and real results, no matter what mode you're in. Maddie went all in for her big day and lost 33 pounds. Emily lost 85 pounds and hit her goal while still living her life.
Weight Watchers gave me the tools and I feel amazing.
Join the millions of members and lose weight with the #1 doctor-recommended weight loss program. Lose more at WeightWatchers.com.
At 6 months, participants in a clinical trial of Weight Watchers program lost an average of 12 pounds.
Hello there, old chap. Good to see another of General Atomic's finest, still eager to serve.
All right, I hope you've been enjoying these interviews, and I'm sure we're going to get some of our expectations and predictions wrong, but that'll be even entertaining later when we go, oop, I didn't predict that. So it'll be fun. But thank you for being here for these episodes. Thank you also to our patrons who support our show financially. Thank you so much for being here. And if you are interested in joining them, head over to patreon.com/followlorecast. Check out all the different tiers. You get ad-free episodes. You get episodes early. You get t-shirts and stickers. You can join us for the patron chats, which the next patron chat is actually coming up on Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, the 28th at 9 p.m. Eastern. You can jump on the Discord. If you are one of our patrons, join our patron chat room and we can share some different ideas for topics to talk about. So come do that with us. Also, big welcome to, I believe it's pronounced Stay. The last name starts with B. Thank you for signing up. I might be completely butchering your name, but just wanted to be careful that if that's a last name, not to call it out. Thank you for signing up this last week. And shout outs also to our Sentry bots who get shout outs every week, Germinator and Sky R. Thank you for your support. And if you'd like to help us show out in other ways, you can leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, like this one that came in from Otaku Redneck. And this one's pretty interesting. Otaku here says, rethinking my initial thoughts. Live this when I first found this podcast. I think there's some typos in there, but I'm not sure exactly what that means. I wasn't all that interested in the approach that Robots goes about the lore, but coming back to it a few years later, I was bored and decided to get back into it. And I'm glad I did. It reignited my passion for Fallout. Decided to get back into Fallout 76 because of it. Give this a listen, all in caps. You won't be disappointed. Thank you so much. I'm glad that you decided to give it a second shot and you found out that you actually do like the show and you took the time to leave a review. I really do appreciate that. If you'd like to leave, did I say Reeve? If you'd like to leave a 5-star rating on Spotify or whatever podcast you listen to this on, that would be helpful as well. There's lots of other ways to support the show. And as I always say, I can't do it without you. So thank you for being here. All right, let's move on with the rest of the show.
Yes, if you have any questions about Nuka World, I'd be delighted to answer them.
All right. Hey, we're back.
We're back. Look at that.
Look at that.
So,
I hear you have some questions for me, huh?
yeah, just a couple. Normally the way that my podcast goes about it is we usually start with just like, because like I have like a bumper bit at the beginning where I just kind of like give a brief explanation of like who you are, the kind of stuff that you do, It's usually just pretty straightforward. Like, this is Tom. He does podcasts, the Fallout podcast, the Fallout lore podcast. Now he's got the Starfield one, stuff like that. But one of the things that I find it's always good to have is just like hearing hearing the guest talk about what you do specifically. So more so like in your own words, like, how would you describe like what you do to, the layman on the street? You meet somebody on a bus and they ask like, what do you do?
Yeah, no, this happens all the time where I meet people and we're like, what do you do for a living? And I've learned you got to keep it short, because otherwise, public quick little conversations, you don't have forever to give them your whole story. So basically at this point I say I run a podcast network, the Robots Radio Podcast Network, and I host 5 of my own shows. And that's usually where I start off. And I'm like,
you host 5?
That's what I do. Yeah, I have 5.
I was only aware of 2 of them.
Yeah, I currently do the Fallout Lorecast, the Starfield Lorecast, like you mentioned, the Elder Scrolls Lorecast, the Mass Effect Lorecast, and the Lord of the Rings Lorecast. And
wow,
Fallout and Lord of the Rings.
It was real awkward when I was shitting on the Amazon Lord of the Rings TV.
No, it's like that's like everyone has their own opinions. I don't think it's a perfect season by any means, but I think that there are some core things that they did well that hopefully they expand on the next season. It continues to improve and all that. So
fingers crossed.
Yeah, but the Fallout Lorecast and the Lord of the Rings Lorecast are actually my biggest 2 podcasts.
I'm not 100% surprised on that, especially with Lord of the Rings. Everybody loves Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. So when I launched the Fallout Lorecast, this was like right before the pandemic hit, a year before the pandemic hit, I think. And then it evolved from there. But in that sense, one of the things I learned, and you and I talked a little bit in the pre-show, I've had a very varied career doing lots of different jobs. I went through a job transition where multi-billion-dollar companies merged, and the people who ended up in charge of my section of the company got rid of a bunch of us. And I had a non-compete for like a year. I live in Florida. It covered like the entire state. It was ridiculous. And so I went through this thing about, it was 8 or 9 years ago, where I was like, okay, well, I was doing really well in my career. I had a really nice job, and I all of a sudden couldn't work for a year. And so I was like, okay, what do I do? And I've always dabbled in content creation and doing side projects. I've played in bands. I currently do my own music on the side too, under the New Star Gods is my band that you can find on Spotify. I used to tour in bands, and this is like 20 years ago. Right. I've done a lot of things on the side, and a lot of those side projects I've noticed it's really hard. It's really hard to find an audience. Discoverability is really difficult. And one of the things I figured out is that there are a lot of really good content creators out there making really cool stuff. And that's not the problem. The problem isn't that they have a hard time making cool things, because usually they come up with some really cool things. The hard part is getting it discovered. It's the marketing side. So looking at my own career, I was like, well, I can wait a year, which sucks, or I can just take a job doing something else. And so I was like, well, what if I go into marketing and I just start from the bottom and work my way up again, which I've already done multiple times, actually 2 different times, 2 different career fields. And so that's what I did. I started working for some startup companies. I ended up working with a marketing agency. I ended up running the SEO department at a marketing agency, the search engine optimization. So in doing that, not only did I further a new career and kind of get back to a place where I was, making good income again, but I also learned a lot from working with people who are brilliant at doing everything from creating thumbnails, that go up on your YouTube video, to the language that you would use in the things that you put in your information in order to keep people reading, or, social media posts, or how advertising actually works, or search engine optimization, which is very, very focused on discoverability and getting your stuff found. And so after doing that for a few years, I was able to take some of those concepts and apply them to what at the time was my newest podcast. I did a Dungeons and Dragons podcast for a while. That didn't work. I'd streamed years before on a very regular basis until I lost my job. And then I was like, well, I got to be doing other things than just streaming now in the evening. Yeah. I need to find a job. And then I basically applied that to the Fallout Lorecast and modeled the concept around the delivery of information in a fun and entertaining way, trying to do high quality audio as best I could at the time, and also finding a niche. Like, that's a very important thing when you're launching a product of any sort, is to find an audience and a demand for the thing you're making. And like, go back in time 5 years. On YouTube, you had all of these Fallout lore videos still, from the whole Fallout 4 buzz, and then Fallout 76 coming out. You know, guys like Oxhorn and a number of others were hitting it big, doing all these Fallout lore videos. But none of them were releasing the audio onto audio platforms. Mm-hmm. And so when you searched Fallout podcasts on audio, it was a lot of these chat shows, which were entertaining, but they weren't doing here, let me explain this lore to you. This is why this is more interesting than you may have noticed when you played the game, or that kind of stuff. So I was like, well, maybe I could do that. And so I started, and I did it, and it grew, and it continued to grow. And then I launched the Elder Scrolls Lorecast and did something very similar with that. And it worked as well. So when I got to about almost 2 years ago now, when I was thinking about launching the Lord of the Rings Lorecast, it was a very different market, because if you search Lord of the Rings podcasts, most of them are lore podcasts, because what else do you talk about? There's not like, I mean, other than an occasional TV show that shows up, it's not like there's a whole bunch of new Lord of the Rings books being written or anything, you know?
Right, like speculation on what the next book's going to be about.
Right.
Like, what do you mean next book?
That's not how that works, right? So what people are doing is they're going and they're talking about all the lore and all the other works that are, you know, behind the big, you know, the movies and the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit and the ones that most people know about, all of that stuff. So that was a big challenge for me, because in some ways I entered into a space with almost no competition, right? Like launching a lore audio podcast when there's nothing else out there. As long as you do a good job of it, there's an audience. And so hopefully they'll find you. So that part made sense. And that was relatively easy, because I found the niche. And a lot of shows that succeed just find their niche. It's like there wasn't really a niche. It's like, okay, what is there, a sub niche inside that niche somewhere? And so that's what I figured out, was that in listening to a bunch of those other shows, nobody was going methodically through books like the Silmarillion, which explain the background to the world and all of that, but they're dense. They read like the Old Testament, and it's archaic language. It's really, really dense. And there's a lot of really cool literature stuff going on there. There's a lot of really cool history and mythology and things being drawn from other sources. And so I was like, okay, well, what if I just go through in order, almost like a read through, and I'm not actually reading it, but like I'll quote sections. But if you decided to read through certain parts of the book, and every week you'd like listen to my interpretation of that, you would get a better understanding. And after a certain amount of time, you'd make your way all the way through the book with a much deeper understanding, and it would be enjoyable to do. And so that's what I did, and it worked. And so that was like a big surprise, because I was entering into a place with a highly competitive, without finding a real niche for something that was absolutely unique. And it worked out. So that's kind of my roundabout story for what I'm doing now and how I'm doing it. And I've also got some other podcasts, and, you know, now I've also running a network, and there's other shows on the network, and people sign up for the Rocket Club, and I help teach them a lot of the things that I figured out about launching your own show and getting it discovered and formatting it in certain ways, and, you know, creating good quality and all of that.
So there you go. How to like get their start.
Yeah. And how to, like, what things actually matter. I think that's another thing that a lot of people, a lot of what I see is a lot of attention being put into places that don't actually matter, which is weird to me, because most of us are video gamers and everybody understands how to min-max in a video game. But when it comes to creating your own content, somehow that concept goes out the door. Do you get what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, I think it's because it's interesting that you phrase it that way. I never really thought of it that way. I think it's because in like video games, there's like a select number of options, right?
Yeah. And you know what the options are. They show up on the UI, you know which ones you can click, you know which ones you can maybe uncover by doing some sort of achievement or some sort of goal in the level in order to get the thing or whatever. It's like it's laid out easier. But if you take the time to figure out, like, if you made a list as a content creator of like, these are all the things I do. I record an episode, I edit it together, I promote it on social media, and then you create the little subsections for each of these. These are the steps I go through when I record the episode. These are the steps I go through for editing. These are the things I go through when I post things on social media, whatever. And you actually analyze like how much time you're spending on each thing and what you're doing and how much of an impact that actually has on the thing that it's supposed to impact. So the impact could be discoverability. It could be growing increasing the number of listeners or viewers to your content. It could be just improving the quality of the thing that you're doing and getting better at making the thing you're making. Like there's lots of different goals, right? And certain things, if you just think about it for a minute, help more than others. So if you're working on creating better quality video, posting things to social media, you would think doesn't really do that unless you're editing other variations of that for video for social media. Now it furthers that goal, right? So like the big question is discoverability. How do you create a thing and then get people to find it? And a lot of people will say, well, you absolutely need social media out there. And so what they do is they set up, say, an X or Twitter account. I'm just going to call it Twitter. You set up a Twitter account. Nobody calls it
X.
Right.
Nobody at all.
Nobody calls it X. Yeah. So you set up a Twitter account and you start posting things on the Twitter account. And most people treat that as just kind of, I'm just going to post my thoughts, things I like, things I don't like. Whenever I have a new episode, I'm going to promote it. I'm going to put it on there. They just do the kind of natural thing, but they don't actually come at it with any real goal or strategy. And what they don't realize is that if you are creating content for a specific audience, then everything that you put on that, and let me start this with a big if you're planning to use your social media account for discoverability rather than just your personal space to vent and share what you think, those are two very different things. If you are specifically sculpting a social media platform as a means of discovery, then everything you post should be content that your target audience will enjoy, or at least that you think they'll enjoy. So if you have a Fallout page and then you post about the election, you're hitting the wrong audience.
Right.
It's not that you can't care about both things. You can do that on your personal account. Sure. Do that on your personal account. But if you're creating a Fallout page, then don't post about the election, right? Because that's not what your audience wants. Your audience wants more pictures of badass looking power armor and, clips from video game stuff and the thing that you found in 76 that you've been trying to get for the last 2 weeks. That's the stuff they want. And so a lot of people don't take the time to really focus in on things and then ask the question of, is this actually moving the needle or not? And I think if they did that, they'd realize that, like, if you count up your hours, the amount of time that people actually put in social media and spend doing social media stuff, and the amount of time it actually increases the number of viewers to their content is strikingly low. It is highly inefficient unless you're creating very specific content that you're putting on social media. And that content is now drawing people to your other content. It's a complex thing when you think about it, but when it actually comes down to it, it's really just, are you putting content out there that people like? And so they like it and they want more of it, and it shows up at the top of their feed. And then now you're top of mind, so that every so often when you remind them that you have a podcast out there or a YouTube channel or whatever, they go, oh yeah, that's a thing too. And then eventually they check it out because they were already a fan of your other content.
How do you sort of square the kind of people who make like video essayists? Like, for example, there's one specifically I think of, but I always forget his name, and that really bums me out because he makes like really good essays. But another one that comes to mind is a guy named Super Eye Patch Wolf, who has made a lot of different essays about. He's made essays about different manga. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce it. Either way,
right, sure.
The weebs are going to get mad at me.
And this is a YouTube channel specifically?
Right. Yes. He's made essays about different kinds of anime, manga. He's talked about, if I remember correctly, at least 2 different TV series, a handful of video games. he made this like really shit posty video talking about Space Jam, where it spun off into this whole thing like, oh, I got like the original copy of what Space Jam was supposed to be, where fucking I forget the name of the basketball player who was in this. The
original Space Jam or the second one?
The second one, yeah.
I haven't even watched it. I can picture his face in my head, but I don't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember.
I'm sure everyone's gonna yell at us again. They're like, I can't believe you guys don't know this.
You idiots.
Names just don't stay in my head.
But like it spun off into this whole thing where like originally like the original script was supposed to be like this like live interactive experience. Bugs Bunny would die in the movie, and then was it Kobe Bryant?
Probably. I mean, that sounds right.
Yeah,
sure.
Like Kobe Bryant would get like so mad because he was in like love with Bugs Bunny, and he would like transcend universes, and then like he would actually they would be the movie itself would be shown in like special theaters, and like Kobe Bryant would show up in cuts in like other movies playing, and then he'd like leap out of a hidden like a trap door in the movie theater and start hurling basketballs and people. It was this really weird, like it started off as kind of like a more serious thing and then spun off into the like, oh, okay, he's just like shit posting now. He makes these like, he made one about like Garfield, which was really good. The like abundance of Garfield like paraphernalia just that exists for this comic strip that showed up like every weekend in the funnies. Right.
Like it got real big in the 80s and 90s, and everybody for some reason had a Garfield t-shirt, and it was like, what are you doing?
Stuffed animals, televisions, just like everything's Garfield. And he did a whole thing about that. But he makes these videos, and he only uploads like once every like several months. And as far as I can see, like going back into his content and stuff, I've been watching him for a while now, but going back, he's kind of always had that sort of like upload schedule where it doesn't seem like anything is super, like continuous. Like it's not like once a month or once a week.
Right. It's not just one topic either. He kind of jumps.
Yeah. He kind of diversifies. Obviously, I mean, to his credit, he's also a streamer, so maybe that plays into an account. But like there are just essayists like that who don't really seem to have much of a presence besides those like big long form like project related things. Right. How do you square like
how does that work? Like how do they
what's the science behind that?
It's so here's the science behind it. They may have other things on the side like streams and things that help drive people to their content, but most likely it's discoverability through YouTube itself. If you think about search engines, the biggest search engine everybody knows is Google. The second largest search engine in the world is YouTube. It's not Bing. It's not some other typical search engine. It's YouTube. YouTube is also owned by Google. So by extension, YouTube and Google are the same thing. They're just part of a diverse ecosystem of things. Partly because if you search something on Google, you're going to get YouTube results in the videos that show up on the list or whatever, right? So when you're somebody like that and you create really good quality content, but you only put it out every 2 or 3 months, quality trumps quantity when it comes to YouTube, at least in the last few years. There's trends that happen with the way the algorithm changes and things like that. What YouTube values the most is click-through rate, watch time, and return views. So if you, and this is why clickbait thumbnails and titles work so well, is because it gets people into your video. Once you get people into your video, if you are entertaining, informative, or especially both in a really engaging sort of way, then they stick around. They watch most of your video. They see one of your video posts pop up again because they probably recognize this style of the thumbnail. They probably have a very consistent style when it comes to thumbnails, even when the topics are diverse. And then YouTube compounds it on itself. If people continue to watch multiple videos from the same YouTuber, you go to your homepage, what are they going to recommend when one of those new videos drops? Right at the top of your list is going to be another one of those videos. So it's a quality thing. And it's leveraging most likely discoverability through YouTube. And so they're using, like, there's a science behind what things people are more likely to click on for thumbnails. One of them includes faces. It's why the trend over the last few years has been like, everybody's got a wacky surprised face.
Right.
That works. If you look on mobile games, most mobile games have a picture of a face for their thumbnail. We as human beings are drawn to faces way faster than other things. Text, you actually is kind of like a negative. Oftentimes our eyes bounce off of text. We don't want to do the work to read a thing because it means more thinking. We would rather see an image. They've even done experiments where like just a character in the center of the screen that you recognize with an engaging face with no text and a not a very busy background is actually more engaging and drives more clicks, especially when paired with a controversial title, something in the title that makes you go, wait a minute, I got to see what this is. And that works. It's the reason why everyone hates clickbait, is because clickbait gets you to click. Right. And then after that is where you build your reputation. So if the clickbait, if you click on something and you enjoy the video and it actually matches the thing that the title said, then it's not clickbait. It's only bait if you feel resentful of having clicked on it. Right. So somebody like that is probably pairing really engaging titles with very easy to identify thumbnails. And then when you actually watch the videos, like you're saying, you kind of enjoy them because they're giving you something in a way that is engaging and informative and you didn't know before. And their delivery is interesting. The way they edit their video together keeps you watching from one moment to the next. There's a lot of these like little things that, like I was saying, like you spend a lot of time posting stuff on social media, but if you actually just spent maybe 5-10 more minutes editing in a little bit better at doing your videos or practicing recording and reading your voice and listening back on it over and over and over again in order to make yourself sound more engaging, or watching people who do really good videos who get a lot of engagement and then going, why does this work? Oh, listen to the pace at which they're talking. Look at the way that they are using the video in a way to really emphasize the points they're making. Look at how they use their thumbnails, their titles, those kinds of things. That's the path. The time doing that stuff is going to pay off way more than, just post another social media thing because maybe people will see it. Like you do that. Let's say you don't even spend that much time on social media. Let's say you spend 2 hours every week doing that. Imagine how much better you would get at making video and audio content if you practiced 2 hours a week. Like that feels so different. It's so easy to just spend 2 hours on social media in a week, but actually like buttoning down and practicing doing things like a skill and getting better and better at that a year later, like that would be over 100 hours of practice that you have at the thing that you were doing. And I bet your videos and your content would look so different than what they did before. And especially if you're now experimenting by posting them online, seeing which videos get more clicks, trying to understand how certain things work, who your audience is, what they're actually responding to. I mean, this is another thing that I'm constantly surprised by. Like I'm almost at 300 episodes of the Fallout Lorecast. You would think I would understand who my audience is, but I'm still surprised sometimes when I look back and I go, oh, more people watched that video this week. Weird. I wouldn't have expected that one. I thought this video would be more popular, but more people wanted to click on this or this audio episode or whatever. You never know. It's why science works, right? Like you can't predict the results until you test it. Yeah. So I know that's a bunch of stuff, but I think that actually might be what's going on there.
It does make a lot of sense when you kind of like, sit down and like really like start mapping out processes and stuff like that. Because I get asked like all the time, like, should I I have this idea for content. I have that idea for content. And I just always tell people like, hey, just like get started, figure out what it is you want to talk about specifically, do it. And then like it from there, it just kind of depends. Like, do you want to be somebody like I don't know. I'm trying to think of somebody like do you want to be somebody who uploads like every single week, but it's like, a more condensed like essay kind of video, so like, anywhere from like 20 to like 30 minutes in length? Do you want to upload like every single day, but it's like a more simplistic style where you're like something like, like the Game Grumps, for example?
Right. Like daily stuff works well for like news and things that are like right in the moment. You got to get something up immediately. But that stuff doesn't have a long tail.
Like what Moist Critical does. Yeah. So like there's two different methods for YouTube content creation in my mind. There's and even in podcasts, you could do this with podcasts too. There's timely news type focused content, which can get a lot of clicks real fast, but then there's no tail because after a day, nobody cares. Or there's evergreen content where you are taking something like a video essay or something, or like a lore podcast like mine, where, 4 years from now, if you go back and listen to the episode about super mutants, it's still going to be valuable information. Now, maybe we get some new games coming out and they expand the lore of the super mutants. So I have to do a follow-up episode that talks about, the new stuff we've learned about super mutants, but that still doesn't mean that first episode isn't valuable. That information still applies. So this kind of content actually has a very long tail and can grow exponentially as long as there's still interest in the topic. That makes sense.
So there's the two different kind of methods of going like through that. I talk with new creators, especially that join the Rocket Club all the time about this. And I find that, and I went through the same thought process as myself. Everybody kind of comes at content creation from the same angle. They get an idea for something that they think sounds fun. And then they go, how do I do that? Can I make it? And they start thinking about the logistics of making it. But they start with the thing they want to make. And if you do that without ever thinking about the opposite side of that, of is there an audience that wants this thing, then it's a crapshoot. You're just grabbing a lottery ticket and you're hoping there's an audience that's out there for the thing that you want to make. And you're lucky if those two things line up. What's more likely to happen is that you start with a concept. This is the thing I want to make because I think it seems fun. And then you look at the audience out there and you go, but they want something a little different from this. And you learn to sculpt your original idea into something that's still enjoyable for you to do, something you might still feel like you're an expert on or whatever, or have something to say, but you're able to then sculpt that and shape that in a way that fits what the audience is actually wanting. Those two things, that's more likely. If you start with the audience side of it altogether and you just go, okay, and you can start even broad. Let's say you're into video games and you want to do a video game YouTube or podcast or whatever. And so you make a list of like, okay, these are all the games I really, really love. And then you don't set yourself on picking any specific game yet. You don't set yourself on picking any sort of format, whatever. And you just look into the world of content creation for all of those things. And then you find the whole. That is way more likely to work in the long run. Like, let's say you happen to be into Fallout and Elder Scrolls and Resident Evil and Destiny 2 or, whatever. And you might even be hoping, I hope I find something for Fallout, but you don't find a hole for Fallout. But all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait, nobody's doing this Resident Evil kind of content. But there's content like that for all these other games, but nobody's really doing this. Or people are doing it, but I feel like I could do that better.
Right.
Then you pick that thing because now you found a hole in the market. You learn to fill that hole in the market. Hopefully that's still something you're going to enjoy doing because it's a game you like, all of that stuff. You start there. And if you can do that and you can fill that hole in the market, you can start building an audience. And then if you can do that with that topic, then maybe you can do a second show that does a similar topic with a different game or something like that. Now you've developed a brand. People know, that's kind of what I've done. People know, Tom does these Lorecasts and he's into these RPG type games or fantasy worlds or whatever. So when I jump from Fallout to Elder Scrolls, it kind of makes sense. There's a lot of crossover between people who like both of those things. If you jump from Fallout and Elder Scrolls to Mass Effect, well, there's some crossover there too. That makes sense too. What if I go to the Lord of the Rings? Well, yeah, there's some crossover there too. So it allows you to kind of expand out. And if I were to look at all of the shows that I'm doing currently, those 5 shows, and I've done more shows. I've handed off some of the shows I used to do, like the Dungeons and Dragons Lorecast, Cyberpunk, and The Witcher, to other hosts who are now doing those shows on their own. If we went back 10 years and you were to say, hey, Tom, if you were to do a lore podcast about any topic, what would it be? I probably would have said Lord of the Rings, because that was probably my first love when it comes to fantasy worlds and all of that kind of stuff. Because I read those books when I was much younger, and I was really into Tolkien stuff when I was a teenager. But
you said before that the first like lore podcast you did was for Fallout,
right?
And the most recent one you did was for Lord of the Rings. Why was Fallout like the first one you did?
Right. It's because
podcast for?
It's because I love all of these things, but I didn't even consider Lord of the Rings to be a potential, because it seemed like the market was so filled at the time. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have experience doing shows like that yet at all. But because there was a hole in the market for Fallout, I was like, oh, I love Fallout. I'll do a Fallout lore podcast. I'll do it on audio. I'll see if I can make it work. Mm-hmm. And so I cut my teeth on that. That worked. I did a number of other shows. And then 2 years ago, I was like, the idea popped in my head, because deep down in my soul, I'm like, I really love the Lord of the Rings. It's like I was reading the Lord of the Rings stuff before Fallout even existed. There's this part of me that it's just deeper in my being. And I remember having conversations with my wife. I was like, do you think it's possible? Is this just gonna be a waste of time? Am I gonna just put a show out there and nobody's gonna find it? And there's so much competition. And it's because I knew that there was a hole in the market for Fallout lore audio content. And I knew that was something that, I was interested in enough. I knew enough about. I was willing to do the extra research, and I did a lot of research early on, learning a lot of the things that I didn't know yet. And still today for episodes, research before I actually do the shows. And I knew it was something I would enjoy, like something I definitely wanted to learn more about. So that's why I did that first. And it's not that I don't love it because I love Lord of the Rings. No, I love both things, right? Like, if think about the things that you like, the fandoms that you are a part of, the games you like to play, you love a selection of them, right? Like, I love both. But there was one that was ready for content around a certain thing because there was a hole in the market. And there was another that seemed extremely daunting with a bunch of content creators who had been doing stuff for years. And I wasn't sure I could compete with that yet. And then after a few years of gaining the experience from creating these shows, from learning how to do this, and then coming up with a new angle on the content that could compete with what was out there, I was ready to launch that show. Had I launched that show first, it probably would have failed, because I don't think I would have had the experience or known what I was doing. Another thing a lot of people have hesitation towards, especially when they join the network, is like, well, I don't know if I want to launch this show because, it may not do well or whatever. And they might have a really cool idea. They might have found a hole in the market. They might have all the expertise and knowledge, and they love the fandom, the product, all of that stuff. And yet they're still afraid to do it. And it's like, no, just go ahead, and you have to start somewhere. You have to fail forward. So even if you did a dozen episodes about this thing and you didn't really ever build an audience, that's a dozen episodes of experience you have recording, editing, creating content that you didn't have before. So if you figure out why that didn't do well and come up with another project and you try that, now all of a sudden you're starting ahead of where you were because of that level of experience that you've gained. So it's not a failure. It was a practice. And I think that's something that most people, it takes them a while to get past. And the truth of it is, if you put something out there in the world and nobody finds it, and then you remove it, it's almost like it didn't exist anyway. It's not like people can go back and go, well, look at all these failures this person had. Look at all this crap they made before. Nobody would become a musician if you would point back at the first time they picked up their instrument and made it sound like a terrible noise out of it, right?
Yeah.
That's just not how that works. No, in fact, it's ridiculous to think that the first time you do anything, you're going to do it well. That's not how humans work. We mess up.
What was the Oscar Wilde quote? Experience is just the name we give to our mistakes.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So you have to, like, I did a Dungeons and Dragons podcast, and it was an actual play with a cast. I was the DM. I edited it all together. They were their characters. We went on this big adventure. I spent all this time planning it. It was a ton to edit because those kinds of shows are a lot to edit because you have multiple voices and sound effects and all that stuff. Basically nobody listened to it. It was like a few dozen downloads per episode. It was very, very small. And I enjoyed doing that with my friends. It was fun to get together and do that, but it was a lot of work. And after about 6 months, one of the cast members decided that he wanted to move on and do something else. So we wrapped up the first season. We never came back to it. If I hadn't done that podcast, I probably wouldn't have been ready to launch the Fallout Lorecast, because I learned so much from prepping and editing and planning and putting stuff online and dealing with hosting and dealing with social media to promote things and a lot of other stuff that if I hadn't had that knowledge, the Fallout Lorecast wouldn't have been successful. So do I regret doing it? No, because that was 6 months of intensive training that prepared me to do this, to the first podcast that actually was a success.
Mm-hmm. When we bring it back to, like, you know, the actual games themselves, specifically, like, because, you know, this is a Fallout themed podcast, and we've already talked a lot about Fallout, the Amazon series that's going to be coming out. That's what we talked about for pretty much like the first whole half of this interview so far, practically. When it comes to, like, I guess more so like the Fallout community, you know, Fallout 4, modding, Fallout New Vegas, Fallout 76, stuff like that. How do you see things like going forward? Because we didn't really talk about that a lot when we were talking about the TV series. Good or bad, like going forward, and like specifically like the future of Fallout 76. We're going to, like, I think, I don't know. It's they mentioned we're going to like Shenandoah Valley, and it doesn't seem like it's going to be an expedition. It seems like it's either going to be an expansion of the map that's already there, or like a way that we can just go to like a different map that's like a whole new gameplay area.
Right.
And just especially with like Fallout 5 so far on the horizon. What do you think that like in between area is going to look like? We got Fallout London coming out. We got the future of Fallout 76. Well, we got the Amazon series. What's like between now and Fallout 5 going to start looking like?
All right. So, yeah, I'll give you my predictions on this. We're going to get the Fallout TV show. Hopefully it does well. I can't predict how that's going to go, but hopefully it goes well. We have 76 as an existing product that seems self-sustaining. They're going to keep it going. It seems like it has enough players, enough income. A lot of people are still trying it out on Game Pass, like that kind of stuff, right? So that seems like it's set. We also have the addition and expansion of mods and paid mods to things like Skyrim. We know they're going to bring that to Starfield. We also know they're probably going to bring that to Fallout 4 with the big update that they've been teasing and haven't released yet. So from Bethesda's standpoint, and I've worked for tech companies and I've done some of this before. Their perspective is what things are financially viable and successful, and how do we keep them going? And then how do we also add more to this Fallout realm while still juggling the rest of our other projects, right? We know that they've moved from Starfield into Starfield DLC / the next Elder Scrolls game. That's what they're working on now. Fallout 5 is still way off on the horizon somewhere. I doubt we will see that in the next 7 years at least. And I know a lot of people don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that. I would love a Fallout 5, but I don't think that we're going to get that. So in the meantime, they're focusing on 76 and mod implementation. They want to turn Fallout 4 into a mod platform that allows things like Fallout London and other things to be created even more easily and sold, so that people who make that stuff can actually get some money for their efforts and, pay their teams and those kinds of things, which is fine as long as it's not gouging and terrible in other ways. Like, I have nothing wrong. If you are a programmer, a designer, somebody who's working on this stuff, and you're putting hours and hours and hours in, and you release a really awesome product, then sure, you should get paid. Yes. Please do, make more. Like, I'm happy to pay some money for better content and have more things to do if that's, something I'm interested in because it looks cool. So I think you're going to have that. I think you're going to have Fallout 76 continue as it's been going. And one of the big asks has been expeditions are fine, but why not just expand the map? Why not give us more quests, more map, more stuff, more creatures? Just like, why do these expeditions have to work like expeditions when you could just make more quests and more map to visit?
Right.
So I think that it takes a ship like that a long time to turn. I think this is something they've been now aiming towards for the last few years, and we're finally getting through the previous content that was already scheduled and designed and worked on to get towards the stuff that is now moving in that direction. If they can keep doing that with 76, because it's a multiplayer, it's functionally very different from Fallout 4 because it's a multiplayer thing, and it's harder for people to mod that. You're going to have Fallout mod platform, Fallout 4, and then Fallout multiplayer, which is 76, and it's going to continue to grow with updates and things like that, as long as the community is still there. The other aspect to all of this is now that Microsoft owns Bethesda, do they source out a New Vegas 2 from Obsidian or somebody else before Fallout 5 comes out? My guess is if Bethesda has a say, no, that won't happen, because they've already shot down in the past concepts for New Vegas 2 being done by Obsidian and other kinds of side projects. They want to kind of hold that stuff tight to them. So Microsoft might say, well, you don't get your say anymore. We're just going to do this because they can. So that might mean that we get that, and maybe that's good. Hopefully it's well made and we enjoy it. Or they go, okay, we understand your reasoning. Maybe they make a really good pitch and they go, we understand your reasoning. We'll hold off. So let's focus on Fallout 4 mod platform, Fallout 76 multiplayer, and then the TV shows, maybe mobile games or whatever. And we just have to wait a while to Fallout 5 happens. I think those are the potential futures.
Yeah, because I mean, it does kind of feel like things are starting to trend that way. Because I can't remember like off the top of my head at this moment, but I think before Fallout 76 came out, they said that modding for the game was going to be, something that they're like looking into, maybe like, year 2, something like that.
Yeah. I think they've probably scrapped that. And
we're going on like year 5 now.
Yeah, because the game still isn't 100% stable on every platform all the time. It still has its bugs. I mean, it's a lot better than it was. It's very playable, but I still see people complaining about how it crashes on PlayStation or whatever. There are still things that require more focus, have a higher cost benefit analysis to getting people to play than implementing mods that now somehow have to work on multiplayer. And when that stuff happens, now anyone else who plays with you also has to download the mod. Like it's a very difficult nut to crack and to do well. So it makes sense to keep the mod platform to the most recent single player version of the game. And that could mean that you build new maps. That could mean that you build new locations, Project London, those kinds of things. It's easier, and people are still going to want to play that stuff. So that makes sense. And Fallout 4 feels modern enough. It's not like going back to Fallout 3 tech, which really starts to feel old.
Yeah.
It still feels modern enough that you could actually do that. And heck, even add mods to add, modern graphics updates and things like that to the engine and that kind of thing. Plus, if they continue to update 4 with some of the things they've learned from implementing in 76 and Starfield, then we might end up with a even more dynamic platform for people to be creating Fallout content on.
I was actually going to ask that. Do you think that a big part of why Bethesda is sort of saying like, no, we don't really want to work on, like a spin-off game, like one of those like in between things, or like outsource, a Fallout New Vegas 2. Do you think that part of the reason they're doing that specifically and focusing so much on like you said, turning Fallout 4 into a modding platform, do you think that that's more so that the games that can come out that are like the spin-off titles can be, Fallout London, Cascadia, stuff like that, to where it's like those are the spin-off games and they're made by the modding community?
Maybe. I think it probably goes something like this. What is the shortest way to us and money? Because they are a corporation. because that's how corporations work. That is, and this is another one that we talked about, how like people misconstrue organizations, corporations, things like this. The sole purpose of a corporation is to make profits for their shareholders. That's it. Aside from that, if they do have some higher purpose, then that's because the leadership has a higher purpose at the time. As a corporation, then they will definitely have a profit motive. If the profit motive, if the calculations show that the amount of time and money invested into releasing a new spin-off game or a Fallout 5 or whatever doesn't give the same amount of profit per cost and time as updating an older game in order to charge you for mods, then it makes sense to do that first, because it's a faster way to money. Everybody and their mom has Fallout 4, probably a few copies somewhere, like
definitely with Skyrim.
Yeah, definitely with Skyrim. And they've proven that, right? Like everybody continues to buy Skyrim, and then they update it for mods, and hopefully, that works out in ways that we are happy to pay for it because it's good content and the modders are making money off of it, but they also get their cut because it's a platform. It's like Steam. You don't launch a game on Steam and don't expect Steam to take their cut. Like they're going to take their cut, but hopefully you sell enough that it's also beneficial to you as well. So they're looking at it from that perspective. So if that's the perspective, then it's easier to update a game like Fallout 4 in order to have payable mods and also support the modding team, because that creates that helps reinforce the community element. I'm sure they're aware that the reason why these games sell so well, or one of them, is because there's a wonderful community element around them. People who get together and love these games and talk about them online and build mods for them and all of that stuff. So if you help support other people to make content, put it on your platform, and then you make a percent of that content, that's a much faster and easier way to make profit than it is to spend 5 years on the next Fallout with the hopes that it sells. And maybe it doesn't.
Do you think that, because it's interesting because like more of like as a retrospective, that's something that Roblox has kind of been like that's kind of been like their jam for either as long as they've been around or like the past couple of years. And we're starting to see it more so recently with like more and more, not really like games, like full out and out games coming out of like Roblox specifically, but like a lot more well-developed, tightly knit stories or like gaming experiences. I can't remember off the top of my head what the name of the game mode was, but I had an old coworker who would actually play a first-person shooter game on Roblox, and he said that it was probably better than like any other like first-person shooter at the time, like Call of Duty, Modern Warfare, stuff like that.
Right.
And it was so much better than any of the other things he experienced. And, it's more or less, I think more or less was free because he just played it on Roblox.
Right.
And I think with Starfield specifically, because Starfield feels a lot more like it was more so made with modding involved or in mind, like as a forefront thing. And they're like, all right, we're gonna make an open game world. There's gonna be 1,000 planets, stuff like that, plenty of space for people to create. We're gonna make the engine and like the world as stable and maybe not like bland or
but not overly I get what you're saying. Bland enough, vanilla enough to add other stuff on top of it.
Exactly. They're more with Starfield. They're more focused on like creating a base world for other stories to exist in that, modders can then come in and create stories within that universe. That's sort of like concept of making games that then in and of themselves sort of act as either modding platforms or game creation platforms like Roblox, modding platforms like Fallout 4, Starfield, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Do you think that is something that's like a net positive or a net negative for the gaming industry? And how do you think that like in general fans are going to respond to that if it becomes like more of like a mainstream thing?
Right. It's as with all of these things, you have to consider things from an angle, from a perspective. Me as a gamer, like personally, I want more. Like if they say, hey, we're launching Fallout 5 next year, somehow we've been able to put it together and we're launching it, and I get more official Fallout stories with Fallout characters and callbacks to the other games and expansions on the lore and that kind of stuff. Absolutely. 100%. That's what I would rather have. Absolutely. Do I want a modding platform where I can buy mods and do other stuff? I could take it or leave it. The fact that the games are moddable as it is enough for me. Does that mean we're going to get higher quality mods? And if I spend money on them, then I get better stuff and I get to play some of those things? Maybe I'll dabble in that and take some looks at it. But from a lore standpoint, none of that stuff is canon, right? Like Fallout London looks amazing. They look like they're doing a great work on it, but it also isn't canon. So it's a fun side story, but it doesn't further my knowledge of the actual Fallout universe. It's a fun, like, well, this is maybe what it would have been like over there. That's great. So it's interesting in that way. It's not like it doesn't have any value, but it's not the same kind of value, right? That's different. From the perspective of the fan base at large, I think there are going to be some people who love that stuff and some people who don't. Just like focusing more on building in Fallout 76. Like there is an audience that played Fallout 3 in New Vegas and 4 and 76. And the fact that you got more building in 4 and then even more building in 76, they love it. And they make amazing, really cool things. I'm fine with just building my little camp and just tweaking it now and then. And it just being one of a few little things that I can do in the game. But some people really love that, and that's their primary thing. And if you were to take that away from the next Fallout release, they would feel like it was missing, because that's most of what they go to Fallout 4, or it's a large percentage of what they go to Fallout 4 at this point. Everyone comes at these things from different angles. Like some people have spent so much time now modding Skyrim and Fallout that they just love checking them, the Nexus mods every week to see what's new out there and how to change up what's going on. And then they do videos about it and all that stuff because they love it, love it, love it. Again, for me, it's one of those things I dabble in when I just feel like it, but it's not something that's like a primary focus for me. So putting more emphasis on that for me doesn't do a whole lot beyond just kind of a fun thing to dabble in on occasion. Does that answer your question? I think it comes from different perspectives.
It definitely does, because one of the things that I was going to challenge on that line of thinking, because we talked earlier when we were talking about the Amazon show, more so like the perspective, right? In the perspective of the show, I said, I don't really hope that like the NCR or the Enclave or like any other like big faction is present to, be like, oh, these are the major players. I want the story to be more of like a focused, finite, like character story, or like a local, community kind of story, a beef between smaller actors, not these big superpowers. And so I kind of challenge more so maybe like the like requirement for canonicity in exchange for something more as like lore friendly. So for example, Sim Settlements 2, for example, is any of that canon? No, most likely not. Right.
Is it lore friendly? Sure.
Yeah. It's very lore friendly, and more so specifically, it's a story that feels like it could be canonized. Right. But the experience in and of itself is so incredibly well done that it lends itself to feeling like, oh, this could be a story that exists within the canon universe.
Yeah, I think there's a solution to this. And first of all, I just want to say, just because something isn't, quote, canon doesn't mean it has no value. Like, right. And like, that's what I'm saying. Absolutely are mods that I love that are not canon. And I'm just like, oh, this is great. This is so much fun. I really enjoy playing this. Like, and Fallout London may be that kind of thing. Fallout Miami might be that kind of thing where I'm just like, oh, I'm going to eat this up. This is so much fun. But in my mind, I know that this hasn't been sanctioned by the storytellers or by the, by Bethesda specifically as canon. And there's that little piece in the back of my brain that knows that, right?
Yeah. But when it comes to like the larger concept of like playing the games and like enjoying like what the experience is and how it relates to the rest of the gaming universe, because like, there have been spin-off games forever, and like maybe not 9 times out of 10, but a lot of times like they aren't canon. Of course, at least 40% of them are kart racers. So, take it with a grain of salt.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
specifically, like if we can like say, Fallout London, for example, if we go through Fallout London, it's a fantastic experience. Everybody loves it. But it's not canon. Is anything really lost or gained in that sense? Like if the experience you get out of playing Fallout London is like, wow, the modding community is really good and they were able to make this like really great story. But is there any like real loss or gain in the fact that it was made by the modding community and thus is not canon? Or is it just the fact that it's just a good story that fits in the universe? Like how
I think
dependent is canonicity?
Yeah. I think, I mean, you're hitting on something. Absolutely. Like if it is high quality and it is good and it is enjoyable and it feels like Fallout, then there's nothing wrong with that. There's like, it doesn't need to be canon to be enjoyed, like, and heck, maybe we get through it and I'm like, that's the best Fallout thing I've played in years. That was amazing. And I've got this, high level of respect for the team and their writers and all of that. I'm like, this was amazing. This felt like a legitimate game, even though I know it wasn't a actual sanctioned game. Yeah, I think in the long term, like it doesn't really matter, but I think it's more about, for me, it's more about what's the quality of the thing that's being made. And a lot of times, even the best mods have a certain level of unpolishedness to them. Yeah. And that's fine. That's fine. Like, it doesn't mean I don't enjoy it. But it's that little nagging reminder of like, well, this wasn't really officially made. But you could argue that parts of the game feel unpolished and unfinished too. And those are legitimate parts of the game. Right. But I think in the long run, when you think back about like, and maybe this is just from having done a lore podcast for so long, but looking at the conversations that are debated online and all of these things, canonicity comes up so much, and people want to say, well, this happened at this location and this is who was there and this is what they did, all of that kind of thing. And because that does come up so much, things that don't fall under canon tend to get left behind and forgotten. And I think that's the danger. The danger isn't, am I going to enjoy this mod project? Because if it's done well, I probably will. I'll probably play it. I'll probably like it. Like I'll probably be happy I played it. I might have had an amazing experience. I might have had some, maybe the storyline was so good and I cried or something, like, oh my God, that was so good. Like that is all 100% possible. 10 years from now, when everyone's going, Fallout 5's out and let's update the lore and let's debate new lore topics. Those side projects aren't going to come up, because they don't fall under canon. And it's kind of a shame in a way. Like maybe the way to solve that is to have a project, any project like that, that's a story project, be submitted to Bethesda and then be canonized. Maybe they read through the script, or maybe they play through the game or whatever, and they go, actual lore masters or, the writers or whoever's on their team who has authority can go, this doesn't contradict in any way the other stuff. We were going to add this to our archives. So now these are characters that can get referenced in official releases in the future. And you've got the stamp of canonicity. And if that, even though they didn't make the game, if they were to approve it and deem it so, 10 years from now, when people are talking about canon, they're going to reference that project. And I think that's probably the bigger thing here. In my mind, is that the stuff on the side eventually will just disappear, but everyone still talks about Fallout 1 and Fallout 2 25 years later, 26, 27 years later, and I think that there's a reason why people debate canon. It has inherent meaning by definition that you don't have if you're not that. So maybe there's a solution to that. Maybe it's a vetting process now that they submit these things to the official mod system or whatever. And, heck, you could even have authors write novels and submit them to Bethesda and say, hey, I've expanded the story of Fallout 4 or whatever. Here's my novel. I was actually
going to say that because I was like, well, first of all, I really like that idea, like the whole like submission and canonization, primarily because that makes me think of Todd Howard draped in a, long purple
Right.
or red orb,
Right.
and he's in like some
religious ceremony where he like waves.
The council.
Yeah.
The council will judge you.
He pours the Nuka-Cola over the thing, and then
into the chalice.
Yeah. But I think that does two things. It really, really legitimizes the fan base and the people working on mods. It gives people a goal to shoot for. And maybe you can even achieve that by submitting the scripts before even finalizing the game. So if it's going to be eligible for canonicity or not. But then it also expands out. I mean, if they want these things to be a platform, why not have, people are writing fan fiction all the time. Why not have fan fiction writers put together novels, and maybe you've got like Fallout 4, The Institute, Aftermath, or something like that, right? And then they submit
that's kind of what I was like. That's kind of what I was running towards, because like if we go off the concept that games like Fallout 4, Starfield, stuff like that they're trying to turn those into more like modding platforms where people can make those larger spin-off stories like Fallout. I was going to say Nuevo Mexico, but that's New Vegas. But the big mods that are being made for Fallout 4, London, Cascadia, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Those can kind of be like the what is it, like the spin-off games, or like the in-between games between like big like mainstay game releases, because games take so long to make these days.
Yeah.
But they also, along the lines that you were bringing up with like fanfic writers and stuff like that, what if Bethesda specifically started also at the same time as, making these main tentpole games like Fallout 4, Fallout 5, stuff like that? They also worked on outside projects like the TV series, or like, maybe a novel series like you mentioned. And what if those those mediums from Bethesda's point of view is how they sort of evolve and maybe not redefine, but like solidify bits and pieces of the actual canon of their games. And then when like a big game comes out, it's like, this is the stuff we've done with like the canon and the lore and stuff like that. And now here's the product that we put out, the next big tentpole.
Right.
And all the stuff between those games that the modders can create. Those are more so like the kind of like, like this could be a story that's out there in the wasteland.
Yeah.
And B, the stuff that, sort of tides people over between these like major tentpole games, Fallout 3, Fallout 4, Fallout 5, stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that's totally a thing. I think from a business perspective as well, if you launch Fallout London and you put it out for free, who knows? Millions of people could download it, right?
Yeah.
Like lots of people own Fallout 4. If you put out Fallout London and you put it up on a Fallout version of Fallout 4 that charges you, let's say it charges you $15 to play Fallout London, they'll make some money off that because a significant portion of the population is ready for something and they're willing to spend $15 on a mod project they're going to have, dozens of hours to play through. So that sounds good, right? But if you were to canonize Fallout London and then put it up on the store, how many more people would then buy it?
Mm-hmm. A lot.
Or if you were to canonize a novel, like maybe you allow different writers to submit their stories and they go through a vetting process, and certain ones are picked and then canonized and released, and Bethesda keeps a cut of the novel sales, but the author gets most of it. And now you have a canonized novel. I mean, lots of people read fan fiction, but if you have an official canon novel that goes out, that number will, like, it'll be 10, 100 times more people who would pick that up. And then Bethesda makes money off of that. The content creators and modders make money off of that. And the fans get more official canon that helps, like you're saying, tide them over to the next big release.
And because it's also a book series, you get Matt, Pat, and the game theorist team talking about it, and that drives content.
Right. Or it shows up in my show. Like, it's one thing for me to do an episode on Fallout London and be like, hey, this is a cool game. You guys should go check it out. It's a really fun mod. They did a good job. Here's some of my favorite stories. It's another thing for it to be canonized. And then I go, well, this is interesting. Bethesda has said that these weird super mutants you come across are now actually canon, and there's a reason why they're different. Let's go into it. That all of a sudden becomes a ton of new content that you can put even just on my show.
brings in the speculation and the theory, and then that churns out just more content. It just keeps the wheel a spinning.
Right. So I think, looking at canonization, because that's kind of what this conversation is revolved around, as being this like, well, there's only a few things that can really be that and everything else is going to be on the side, but it's okay to still enjoy those as well. That's kind of the feeling of that. And flip it on its head and go, well, canon content can be good content created by other people as long as it's vetted and approved.
No, yeah.
That becomes like, that's such an open thing. And I think the next thought then would be from Bethesda's side, well, you have to pay somebody to do this. But if the potential of new income coming from people buying mods and buying books, that's going to well pay for that person's job. to spend time vetting this stuff and making sure that it's approved for canonicity.
Right.
As long as Todd Howard is willing to allow somebody the ability to approve that, which
to allow them.
Right. Because he's very, and I'm not trying to be, snippet. He's very careful about what things he puts out and what things he deems, approved and all of that. Like there's a reason why Starfield took so long to make. Because they were being very careful with the game that they put out. And I think like to go further into this, the reason why everything takes so long and the reason why they're trying these other methods of monetization and expanding into movies, it's partly because game development just keeps taking longer and longer and longer. And it's a bigger and bigger risk. And when you are a business owner, you want to minimize risk. So spending 7 years working on their most recent title is a huge risk because it takes a lot of time and money. If Starfield didn't sell, that would have been potentially studio ending.
Yeah.
I mean, every time they release a new game, they're rolling the dice and chances are people are going to buy it. But if they buy a game and then everyone goes, oh, this is hot garbage. And I'm not talking about like some people on the internet or the people who are like, well, I don't really like Starfield yet, but I'm waiting for the expansion. Hopefully there's more story and I'll dive into it. Like
you're talking about like the average person.
I'm talking about like it gets a 10 on Metacritic, like 10 out of 100 on, or 1 out of 10 on Metacritic. Like it absolutely just flounders. It's like some of these other games that have come out recently where they're like, well, we sold, there's 10,000 concurrent players right now. And it's like they were hoping for 1 million, that is catastrophic. And there's a very real chance that could happen, not necessarily because they made something bad, but even just the fact that like popular sentiment turns around or, people talk about how this game just isn't good anymore. Nobody likes it. And content creators all flock to the negative videos, because they get clicks. And then all of a sudden 7 years of work completely tanks the franchise.
Do you think that's what's happening with Starfield? Because it seems like every article for like the past couple of months that I opened, like, like Baldur's Gate 3, here's how it's doing compared to Starfield. Power World, here's how it's doing compared to Starfield. Right. Helldiver 2, here's how it's doing compared to Starfield.
It's a very easy meter stick because we know how many they've sold. We know they're kind of a big tentpole on the horizon. It's a big studio that's released games like Skyrim and Fallout 4, which have sold millions and millions of copies. It's a very easy metering stick. It's also now owned by Microsoft, so there's of course expectations on that. So you've got all of that. My sense of Fallout or my sense of Starfield is that it's the first time we get a first version of a new series from Bethesda. And one of the reasons why it feels shallow compared to something like Fallout or Elder Scrolls is because by the time Bethesda launched Elder Scrolls 3, they were standing on 2 full games of content, plus Van Buren, the Fallout Bible, like other content that was out there about the world that expanded and it made it feel like we were already entering in a deep and interesting world, even if you never played Fallout 1 or 2. They were pulling from so much already. By the time most people jump into Elder Scrolls, most people didn't start with Arena. They started with Morrowind or Oblivion or Skyrim. And those games already have massive amounts of lore behind them that made it feel like a really interesting and dynamic world. With Starfield, you're starting at 0. And you have to explain in that one game some of the things that have happened and still keep them interested in characters and the storyline and the plots and the planets they're going to and all of these things, while also trying to build this into a platform that they can expand on and build more content around and have people mod and do all of these things. So it's a really, really big task, because to compare it to something like Baldur's Gate isn't fair. Baldur's Gate wasn't doing those other things. They were just writing interesting stories with all sorts of different ways things can play out with the characters. Starfield didn't try to do that. Starfield tried to give you these stories with these characters, this main engaging story, these locations, and this amount of history, in order to then move on to the next stage, which is more DLC and then maybe a sequel and some other things, and a platform that other people can mod on top of, and all of that. It's an apple and egg, or apple and orange, or egg.
It's the
kind of
egg,
thing.
and then it hatches into an apple.
They're two very different things.
I think somebody misexplained biology to me.
Yeah, they're very different things. Now, does that mean that I don't wish that some of the things that you can do in Starfield have there's more characters you can kill outright than the ones that are protected? Absolutely. I want to kill all of the terrible people on the Freestar Collective board, but they just take a knee and then the guards attack you. Yes, I want that. Do I want multiple ways that things could play out differently based on conversation and dialogue, like in Baldur's Gate? Yeah, absolutely. Do I want certain kinds of things to be a little bit more visually interesting, like they are in Cyberpunk 2077? Sure. Yes, I would love all of that. But I don't know that we're ever going to get all of that all in one thing while still trying to do the other things that they're trying to do with it. It's kind of too much.
Right.
But for some people, like if you read the the non-salty subreddit for Starfield, there are lots of people who absolutely love the games. This is the best experience of my life. This game hits me just exactly the right way. This is the space exploration game I've always wanted. Like, those kinds of comments are all over the place. So there is a large population that really, really does love it. So that means that it's not terrible. It's not flat out bad. It just doesn't do certain things that some of the other games that they're known for do as much. And it also shows us a progress. If you chart the progress from like the early Elder Scrolls games through Fallout, when they get Fallout, and then, those games, and then Skyrim, and then Fallout 4, and then Starfield, there's less player agency as you move on, and the games become focused more and more and more just on the limited set of things that you can choose to do. And the purists out there are going to go, well, I long for the days of Morrowind where you could just kill Vivek and ruin the game. It can never actually have a canon ending, that kind of stuff. I think the solution for that, and I hope they work this into future Fallout games, is a toggle in the options menu that says, allow me to kill essential NPCs.
Yeah. Make it like I was playing Pacific Drive, which came out the other day, and in accessibility, this was actually something that somebody in my stream at the time told me, which I probably would have never known and probably would have gotten demonetized because I don't pay too much attention. I don't pay enough attention as I probably ought to with like sound-based settings and stuff like that. But there was an actual like streamer mode in the in the settings where it won't play music that's going to get you demonetized. Right.
Yeah, this is a thing that's pretty common, is they'll have these like streamer modes for most recent games, or a lot of them. So something like that like allows you to kill essential NPCs, and then pops a notice on your screen that says like, you've killed an essential NPC. This might totally screw up your quest lines, your games, like you may not be able to complete certain things, and we can't predict what will happen. Are you okay with that? Yes or no? If you hit no, it reloads you to right before you killed them, and then you move on.
It gives you that accessibility option,
right? Give the players at least the choice. That's what I want. And then, and I also think it would be really interesting if they updated quest and dialogue stuff continually and like into the future. Like maybe it doesn't matter what the game is, Fallout 4, and you're with one of your companions, or Starfield and you're with one of your companions, and you make decisions that then affect the way they like you, but in ways that feel more and more real over time. Like they update those things, or they expand other quest lines. Like, why you could have a DLC that's like, oh, here's some new planets and some new main storyline to go do over here, right? But why not also add in like a second character focused storyline for your companions. Not just a new companion, but like, let's say Sarah is your favorite companion and you've already romanced her. What if there's a second loyalty set of missions out there that go further with your relationship and other dynamics in the history of that character and people that they know and those kinds of things? Like, people would pay for that. And maybe it's part of a big DLC. Maybe it's a $10 little expansion where you get more stuff from Sarah, and eventually it's lumped into some, super awesome bundle a few years later with all the DLC or something, the
game of the year version.
Right. You could add through extension all the updates into a game like Starfield or Fallout 4 that you would want, that the community's been asking for, that weren't there initially, still charge for them. Some of them, hopefully give out some of them for free.
Yeah.
And then
updates and stuff like
and updates and stuff. Yeah. But like the big ones, you charge for the big ones, and maybe some of those make fixes or whatever, but you could do all of that. And then at, let's say 5 years from now, we're looking at Starfield and it's a completely different game, just like 76. It's a completely different game. There are pieces in there that are from the original design of the game, but like there's so much that just wasn't. And now when you read a review that came out like the month the game released, and then you actually play the game, you go, oh, well, this game doesn't even do that anymore. Yeah. Like you could, that's the thing. You could update all of that stuff.
Do you think that Starfield is gonna, like, especially with the concept of like Bethesda's concept or the potential concept, because we're really just theorizing here. Obviously, there's a lot of strong evidence for this, that, and the other thing, but I mean, we don't know.
Yeah.
Todd Howard could come up on the next game conference and like, yeah, so we did it. We made the thing that everybody wanted, Fallout kart racing, and then just fuck off into the sunset and never come back again.
Sure.
But in the current concept that we have going here, the little theory that's rattling around between our brain cells, with the idea that Bethesda is more so making games that are more like modding platforms in the overall, like the general concept, do you think Starfield is kind of like a one and done, except, obviously making it more mod accessible, and then obviously releasing like, updates, DLCs, patches and stuff like that? Do you think that Starfield is going to kind of become something a little bit more akin to No Man's Sky, in the sense that it's like, because like the story of Starfield feels pretty succinct. Obviously there's a lot of like background lore and stuff that they can expand on with, DLCs, updates, expansions, patches, this, that, and the other thing. Do you think that Starfield is going to exist in that sort of thing, a one-off game that just has a lot of stuff added to it constantly, like No Man's Sky? Or do you think it's actually going to get a sequel like Skyrim, Fallout, literally any other game?
Yeah, I bet this is something that they're debating right now because of the length of time it takes the main studio to release each game. Because if we're looking at a Starfield official sequel, like, we are probably not getting the next Elder Scrolls for at least 4 years, would be my guess. By the time they're finally putting everything together, written, created, all of it, right? We're at least 4 years out. So that's 2028. If at its fastest, they put out Fallout 5 after that, within the next 4 or 5 years, you're now
2030-ish.
2033. If it takes another
gotcha.
5 years from that to get to Starfield 2, you're at 2038. That's a long time away.
Yeah.
It's hard to plan anything out that far for video games, because what do even games look like in that many years from now, right? In 16, how many of those? 12 years from now? Like 12, 14 years from now?
Something like that.
Something like that. That is so hard to predict. So I have a feeling that decision is on the back burner. What I hope they come to realize is that they can do kind of a No Man's Sky focused kind of thing with this and continue to just release more content. I think that totally makes sense. Like, the first DLC doesn't have to be the first of like the traditional X number of DLC that we put out per release. Like, what if the first DLC adds in some new planets, we get more storyline for a certain part of the game, and then another year and a half goes by and we get another DLC and it's more story content, and maybe they've updated some of the other things, and then those sell well because they've got this many people and they've continued to update the game and make it interesting and add new stuff in it and do some of the things that people were hoping were going to be in there. And then another year and a half goes by, and then we get another DLC. Or it becomes this kind of, it's legitimately a platform, right? Like you can mod stuff in, but then they are also participating in the modding stuff in with official content that just keeps going until it stops selling. This is one of those things I've always thought was weird. Like, why did we only get so many DLCs for Fallout 4 or for Skyrim initially? Like, they go through this period of time for like the next 2 years or so where they release on a schedule all the DLC that comes out. They did it with Fallout 3. They did it with New Vegas. And then they just stop because they want to make the next game. But why not designate a certain part of your studio as, just like they've done for 76, and they've even outsourced some of this, as the people who continue to make content for this thing that people are still playing.
Like what they did with Rust, for example. Like Rust 10 years ago looks like a completely different gaming experience from a completely different time in history. And it seems like every month they're dropping like, oh, here's like changes to the map here. Like now you can build like CCTV cameras, drones,
or even
cars.
Just at its smallest bit, here's just more story and characters.
Yeah. Like
here's a reason to spend another 10, 15 bucks and come back into the game for another 20, 30 hours or whatever.
Yeah.
And place through some new content. And maybe then you decide, oh, I'm going to do another replay of the main story. And then you realize, oh, they've made some changes there too. This is cool. And then, you know, you take a year off, you play other things because it's natural to just kind of go play other stuff. And then they've got another release and you're like, oh, there's more about this character that I really like. That's cool. I'm going to get back into that and I'm going to play through it. I don't see any harm in that. Like, especially if it's not sapping resources from your ability to move on to the next big title and all of that stuff. If something like that makes enough money and sustains itself and you have a team of say 40, 50 developers all just kind of siloed off working on that and it sells and it supports itself and it makes money for the company and the fans like it, why not? Why not keep doing it? Like, maybe there's a reason. Maybe there's a good reason. Maybe it's the whole like, well, we don't want to wear people out, like the MCU problem. That could be it too. So maybe just take time off and then put more stuff out again. You know, it's not like I don't know. It seems like there's more flexibility around these things that would create more content in ways that we would all enjoy than what has been tried yet, I guess.
In a time of more so upheavals, unrests, worries, stresses in both real life and the gaming industry, a lot of people are, you know, running to video games, media in general, as a form of like escapism. And, you know, obviously then there's different kinds of media that sort of like, because, you know, art is a reflection of real life and that just bleeds into the media that we consume because the media is in art and the art is a reflection of real life. So, you know, it's a vicious cycle in a way. What do you do and or what do you advise people to do to sort of take on the different medias and create in a way that is both, you know, sort of not really embracing that escapism, but like following the escapism, but also being able to then turn around and reflect what they create or what the experience with that, like, you know, view of reality in the surface of what they make or in like the rear view mirror. So like as a creator, how do you like as a creator, as a gamer, how do you stay grounded and like how do you stay grounded but also like aware and like optimistic at the same time? Yeah, I think not spending too much time on social media helps. Oh God. Okay, that's it. That's the podcast. I think that's the solution. I think the death of joy is loving a thing, like playing a thing or loving making content for a thing, and then seeing a bunch of people be negative about it. Not even your creation, but just like, man, I just got through that new, expedition in Fallout 76 and that was a blast. And then you're browsing Twitter
or Reddit, and people are like, "Oh my god, I can't believe they make you do this in the expedition. I hate it."
Yeah, you just see all the people talking about all the negative aspects,
right? And you just got done playing, and you were like, "No, I had a lot of fun. What's wrong with you guys?"
Yeah.
And I think that, to the Fallout community's credit, especially fans of 76, they've done a really good job just like closing their ears to a lot of the naysayers out there and saying, well, I have fun, so I'm just going to go have fun while you guys all complain, and I think this is deep down really a human question. How do you stay true to the things that you enjoy, who you are, and not feel like you have to justify yourself to a greater, social dynamic that's out there saying something different? And I think that's something that we all have to justify, and it happens in video games, or happens in your taste in music or movies or whatever, right? Like, well, like maybe you're like, well, I really do like Nickelback. And I'm like, cool. Okay. I'm like, have fun with that.
You say that in kind of like a judgy way, but I think I was literally just having this conversation with like my chat in stream or like in a Discord server. Like, Nickelback is like the band that everybody says is awful, right, but then they hop in their truck and they blast like, like Saving Me or like
right. but that's how that goes, right? You say, I like this thing that is publicly usually shot down. And then the other person, me in the conversation, looks at you like, okay, sure, cool. Like they don't know what to say about it, because they're like, why would you admit to that? There's like that awkward feeling of like, I'm supposed to hate that, so aren't you supposed to hate that? Why would you be proud of that? Right. And it creates this weird social dynamic, and it happens online. It happens all over the place. And it happens in video games and things like that a lot. And I think I think that just comes down to us just being okay with who we are and understanding why we like the things that we do. And there's nothing wrong with saying, I like Nickelback, and then the other person going, okay, cool, I guess. And then you can go, well, you know what? That most people don't realize about Nickelback is X, Y, and Z. And this song really resonated with me at a certain important part of my life. And I know why I like this. And the fact that everyone else doesn't like it is fine. They don't have to. That doesn't matter to me. You don't have to be antagonistic in your defense. You just have to understand why it is you like a thing, and then be okay with that. Like if you actually dug into it, the reason any two people like playing the Fallout games will probably be different in certain ways. There are probably people who are they just really love Nuka-Cola for some reason. I mean, Nuka-Cola is cool, but it's not the first reason I play Fallout. But like maybe some people just really, really love the way the artwork looks and the idea of like soda, and they just love drinking soda, and like that's a thing for them. And even though that doesn't resonate with most of the audience, that doesn't mean they're wrong. It just means that they just need to understand, look, no, that is why I like it. I really like this. I want to make a Nuka-Cola camp in my 76, characters base, like whatever. And that's totally fine. Maybe I really like it because I want to read every terminal and I want to learn all the lore while playing through the game, which is what most people skip over. That's why they listen to shows like mine, so that they don't have to sit there and read in the midst of rather shooting things. Right. Mm-hmm. And maybe you'd rather shoot stuff. It doesn't mean you and I are wrong. We just love two different aspects of the same thing. There's nothing wrong with that. Maybe you love science fiction and I love fantasy. We both love forms of fiction. Neither of us is wrong. We just probably need to understand why we pick the one we do. The fandom type of stuff, like the arguments around fandom, is so silly. It's not politics and it's not religion, right? Like to some it is. To some it is, but that's the thing, is that like debating politics is a life or death thing, because legal policies, laws will determine who lives and dies. Religion is potentially a life or death thing, depending on how literal the actual reality is there around the things that you believe, right? Like those are life or death things. The enjoyment of a video game, what bands you listen to, that's not life or death. That's just taste. And maybe somebody has different taste than you do, and maybe they have different taste than the majority, but that's fine. Own it. Like the most attractive, this is one of the things I learned as a young man. The most attractive thing you can do, that you can do, is be confident. A average looking person who walks into a room confidently is more attractive than an attractive, like stereotypically attractive person who walks into a room looking like they're scared of the world. And that's how you have to treat your fandom. You know, like, well, this is what I love. Oh yeah? Well, yeah, no, I really love it. I really love it. And this is why. That becomes attractive. In fact, being the counterculture sometimes can be even more compelling than falling into the majority.
That was good. I think that was a good quote to end the podcast on.
Yeah. So love what you love, like enjoy what you enjoy. Don't let other people tell you that you can't enjoy a thing. I think the Fallout 76 community knows that more than most people. And,
oh no, yeah, they fought tooth and nail for that.
Absolutely. For years, they've been arguing on social media about like, well, you're an idiot because you didn't give the game a second try, and it's a lot better now. So maybe stop stealing that from yourself and actually enjoy things. What are you doing? Yeah. To plug into everything else we're doing, check out robotsradio.net. Reach out to me on Twitter at robots_radio. Check out the Robots Radio Rocket Club, where you can join me and a bunch of our other creators creating your podcast, starting a new podcast, or helping your current podcast grow. There's more information about that on robotsradio.net as well. And you can always talk with us and the entire community, over 2,000 people on the Robots Radio Discord. Come join us. We'd love to chat with you. See you guys next time.